Chapter 288. Before she reached the Feng Manor's gates, her family, who had heard that she had returned, were already waiting outside with joyous expressions. Feng Shao supported the old man as he waited outside. His eyes were filled with joy as he occasionally looked towards the main street and excitedly chattered. This child really is something. Even when she goes out, she acts first and reports later. These past few days, I haven't been able to sleep well. Every day, I've been worried about whether or not she would run into any danger outside. If she had brought the phone guards with her, that would have been fine, but she only brought that girl, Ling Shuang. Fortunately, she has returned safely. I can finally put down the heavy stone in my heart. TSK. You only have this bit of ambition. The old man glared at him, but his face was filled with a smile. The joy and excitement that came from the bottom of his heart infected everyone at his side, causing everyone to look forward to the eldest young Miss' return. She's coming, she's coming. The eldest young Miss has returned. A servant shouted in joy, pointing at the white figure that had appeared on the main street. Because she was riding Lao Bai and was slowly approaching from a high place, everyone saw her as soon as she appeared. After everyone rejoiced, they saw that the eldest young Miss' ruined face had truly recovered its former beauty. They could not help but shout in joy. Elder Master, Master, the eldest young Miss' face has truly recovered. Ha, 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 Phone Girl has returned. Quickly, quickly set off the firecrackers. The old man happily shouted. Following his voice, the sound of firecrackers began to crackle in front of the Feng Manor's gates. It immediately attracted the surrounding people to gather around, and they all looked around curiously. Feng Zhou, who was riding Lao Bai, could see the joyous expressions of his family from a distance. He could not help but reveal a smile. Seeing that they were setting off firecrackers in front of the gate, a joyous and lively atmosphere immediately filled the air. Yang, who was sitting in front, saw this lively scene and leaned back slightly. Grabbing his sleeve, he was both happy and a bit timid. Sensing his uneasiness, Feng Zhou smiled and gently patted his little head. Only then did he look at the two people coming over and call out. Grandfather, Father, I've returned. You child, how could you leave without discussing it with your father? Father has been worried about you all this time. It's good that you're back now. He went forward to hold Lao Bai's hand. When he saw the child sitting in front of him, he asked in surprise, where did this child come from? Feng Zhou dismounted and carried Yang down. Why are you asking so many questions? They were still on the streets. Come on, let's go home first. The old master glared at Feng Shao and ordered his men to take the horse away. Who would have thought that the guards would not be able to drag Old White at all? Young miss, we can't drag this horse away. The guard rubbed his nose and said embarrassedly. Hearing this, Feng Zhou chuckled. He stroked Lao Bai's head and whispered a few words into his ear. Lao Bai wagged his tail and then stomped his hooves to walk away. As for Chiu, who was mixed in with the crowd, he had already run inside and wandered around the Feng Manor. This horse is not bad, but it looks a little strange. Feng Shao laughed loudly. Looking at the white horse that was shaped like a dragon, he was a bit curious as to what breed it was. Grandfather Feng, Uncle Feng. The young voice was a bit timid as he called out. The old master and Feng Shao were startled. Seeing the child leaning against the Feng girl's side, his clear eyes carried a trace of unease and fear. The two could not help but smile and praise him. Good child, let's go inside first. Chapter 289. Qinggu. The sound of Qing Ji's voice caused everyone who had already stepped through the door to pause their steps and turn back to look. Seeing the purple-robed noble figure standing not far from the Feng Manor, everyone could not help but look towards the white-robed Feng Qinggu, who had an extremely beautiful appearance and a cold body. The person who came was the third prince, Murong Yixian, her fiancé. Although the old man had proposed to cancel the marriage between the two of them, due to Murong Yixian's unwillingness, the marriage was still delayed until now and the relationship between the two of them had yet to be broken. The surrounding commoners were originally not optimistic about the marriage between the two because Murong Yixian was the most talented among the new generation of glorious Sun and had the most promising future. As for Feng Qingge, even though she was the eldest young miss of the Feng Manor and the #1 beauty of the glorious Sun Empire, in this world where strength was respected, her strength was nothing special in the eyes of the world. In fact, even some of the children of the first wife of the family were more talented than her, not to mention the fact that her face had been completely disfigured. Even if her face had been restored, her cultivation was still too weak. In the eyes of the crowd, she was still not worthy of Murong Yixian. After all, the person standing next to a favored son of heaven must be a woman with first-class appearance and strength. You all go in first. She handed Yang to her grandfather and let them go in first. All right, then you all go ahead and talk. If you really can't do it, then call him in. The old man said, then led Yang inside. Feng Shao glanced at Murong Yixian, shook his head, sighed and also walked in. Although he was quite satisfied with Murong Yixian, unfortunately, his daughter didn't like him and he couldn't do anything about it. No matter how satisfied he was with him, everything had to be done according to his daughter's wishes. Murong Yixian walked forward and saw that the scars on her face had all disappeared. Her complexion had returned to its previous smooth and flawless appearance. Looking at such a beautiful but distant her, his heart ached slightly but a gentle smile appeared on his face. There's a tea house not far ahead. Let's go and have a drink. Fengzhou glanced at him and saw that there were many commoners watching them. He nodded and followed him to a room on the second floor of the tea house not far away. In the room, the atmosphere was slightly stiff. There was no intimacy between lovers, no shyness, and no infatuation. The two of them sat at the table and Murong Yixian poured tea for her. Looking at her indifferent and distant expression, he narrowed his eyes slightly to hide the pain in his eyes and stared at the tea in his hand. Grandfather Feng went to find my father to ask about canceling the marriage but I didn't agree. Fengzhou picked up the teacup and took a sip. When he heard this, his eyes moved slightly. He glanced at him and said, I've already told you about the engagement. We're not suitable for each other. There's no point in dragging it out. Not suitable. He raised his eyes to look at her indifferent expression and smiled bitterly. We can be said to be childhood sweethearts. How can we not be suitable? I know you must be angry because I didn't recognize you back then. I also know that it was my fault. But Qingge, can't you give me another chance? Feng Zhou shook her head with a smile when she heard this. Her clear eyes were sharp as if she had seen through everything, and her clear and unhurried voice sounded out from her mouth in a neither fast nor slow manner, and it struck mercilessly at his heart. Chapter 290. Hearing this, Murong Yixian's hand trembled as he held on to the teacup. Under her gaze, he slowly lowered his gaze and his face paled slightly. Seeing his expression, she tugged at the corner of her mouth and said, Since you know, why pretend that you don't know anything? Perhaps the previous Feng Qingge had fallen in love with you, but I, Fengzhou, will not. You are like a stranger to me, so I must cancel this marriage. Fengzhou. He raised his eyes and looked at her. That's right, I'm Fengzhou. I can also be called Feng Qingge, but I'm definitely not the Feng Qingge who had fallen in love with you. Hearing this, his lips moved as if he wanted to ask something, but in the end, he did not ask anything. He brought the teacup to his lips and took a sip, calming his heart. After a long while, he said, I understand. I agree to cancel this marriage. That would be for the best. The corner of her lips curled up, revealing a smile. Seeing her face overflowing with joy, his eyes flashed and said, I want to get to know you again. Under her stunned gaze, he revealed a gentle smile, You're right. The first time we met in the restaurant, the second time we met in the Peach Blossom Cove, and the second time we met on the street, you stunned me and made my heart beat faster. I was unable to forget you, so even if the marriage is cancelled, I will still pursue you. Fengjiu shook her head and stood up, smiling. I advise you not to waste your time on me. Go and cultivate properly. After leaving behind these words, she left. She was very clear that she would not fall in love with someone like Murong Yixian. Although he was very outstanding, he was not suitable for her. Seeing her turn and leave, he did not stop her because he knew that as long as he was strong enough and outstanding enough, then there would come a day when she would be his woman. In this world where strength was respected, the strong would be respected and the weak would not be able to survive. Even if she had the Feng Manor behind her, this world was so big that there would come a day when she would know that only the strong could protect her. And she was right. He did need to cultivate diligently. The glorious Sun Country was only a stepping stone for him. He would not spend his entire life here. Outside, there was a wider sky for him to soar in. Feng Manor. Fengjiu heard Guan Xilin's voice before he even entered the living room. Why isn't Xiaojiu back yet? That Murong Yixian is really something. It's really boring for a man to be so wishy-washy. Who said I didn't come back? She walked in with a smile. Guan Xilin, who was sitting down, greeted her happily as soon as he saw her. Xiaojiu, you're finally back. I rushed back as soon as I heard that you were back. You're about to enter the residence, how can I not come back? She said with a smile, but when she didn't see Yang Yang in the hall, she asked, Grandfather, where's Yang Yang? He's tired. I've asked the servants to take him to rest. The old man smiled and said, I've instructed the kitchen to make a few dishes that you like. Come and have a few drinks with us before returning to the courtyard to rest. When Feng Xiao heard the old man's words, he frowned in disapproval and said, Father, Qing Gu just came back. She must be exhausted. If she wants to drink, let her rest first, right? Look at her. She's lost so much weight after going out. She must have suffered a lot outside and didn't rest well. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and said, It's fine. I won't. Before he could finish, he was interrupted. Chapter 291. Seeing this, the old man stroked his beard and laughed as he waved his hand. Ha ha ha, all right, we'll do as you say. Go, little Feng. Have a good rest. Tonight, you must accompany your grandfather for a few drinks. All right, then I'll go back and rest. She chuckled and took 2 steps before stopping. She turned back to look at them and walked back with a smile. You haven't given me the present yet. Child, why did you bring us a present when you went out for training? Feng Xiao shook his head and smiled. He felt that it was good enough that she came back safely and did not care much about the present. However, when he saw what she took out, his eyes widened in disbelief. This is the red jade coral. Where did you get this? In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Looking at the precious red jade coral in front of him, he only felt that this present was too good. One had to know that this thing was a priceless item. Aside from being an ornamental item, it could also be used for cultivation. Even in the imperial family, he had only seen such a small pot, but his daughter had brought back such a large pot for him. Just thinking about it made him excited. Fengjiu smiled and squinted his eyes. Father, this is for you. As he spoke, he looked at his grandfather who was smiling at the side and took out a wine gourd and handed it to him. Grandfather, this is the spiritual wine that I specially brought back for you. I've tasted it. The taste is mellow and the aftertaste is endless. Moreover, this wine gourd is a treasure that can hold 500 kilograms of wine. In the future, if you want to drink wine, you don't have to worry about not having enough. Ha 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 ha, good. Little Feng still has my heart. You know that my favorite thing is wine. The old man happily took the wine gourd and could not wait to open the lid of the gourd to smell the wine. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes slightly with an intoxicated expression. It's so fragrant. And it has such rich spiritual energy. Even in the entire country of glorious sun, you can't find such good wine. Really? Let me try a sip. When Feng Shao heard this, he went forward. Unexpectedly, the old man hugged the gourd in his arms and waved him away. Go, go, go. My good granddaughter brought this back for me. You also have that gift. Don't think about it. Fengzhou's eyes softened as she watched the two of them laughing and joking around. This kind of family was really good. It was simple and warm. Although the population was small, everyone valued kinship. She had not experienced the kinship in her previous life, but she had all of it here. Brother, this is for you. She smiled as she took out the 8 trigrams plate and handed it to him. Guan Shilin was slightly taken aback and said in surprise, I get a gift too. Hearing this, Fengzhou couldn't help but chuckle. Of course, you're also part of my family. Grandfather and father both have a share, so how could you not have one? She smiled as she looked at the item in his hand. She didn't know what it was, so she said, this is an 8 trigrams plate. It's a transcendent artifact. It can be used to fly, and it can also be used to fight enemies. Hearing her words, Guan Shilin picked up the 8 trigrams plate and played with it. His face was filled with joy. Then I'll be returning to my courtyard first. She smiled as she spoke. Only then did she walk into her courtyard. When evening came, Ling Shuang and Leng Hua both returned. Dinner was being prepared in the manor. The servants coming and going busily made the entire Feng manor seem very lively. Chapter 292. All right. Leng Hua replied and headed towards the backyard when she saw her master walking out with a yawn. Seeing this, she called out, Master. Fengzhou replied. She had just woken up and was still a little sleepy, so she appeared to be very lazy. Master. Leng Hua couldn't help but smile when he saw her and called out to her. Fengzhou's gaze swept over him and smiled, looks like your body has become much stronger. I practice Tai Chi every morning and night, so my body is already very good. Leng Hua said happily. That's good. She nodded and walked towards the old man who couldn't help but start drinking. She smiled and said, Grandfather, aren't you afraid of getting drunk? This wine has a very strong recoil, so you can't drink too much at once. Ha ha ha, it's fine, it's fine. I can hold my liquor well. The old man laughed and took another sip of wine. He waved his hand and called out, Since everyone is here, let the servants serve the dishes. Come, come, everyone, come and sit. Big Sister Feng. Yang Yang ran over and hugged her leg, his face full of joy. Big Sister Feng's house is really beautiful. Uncle Feng even took Yang Yang to see the fish. Hearing this, Fengzhou chuckled and stroked the little guy's head. It's good that you like it. You have to be obedient here, understand? Yes, yes, Yang Yang will be obedient. He nodded his head heavily and replied in a crisp voice. That night, the whole family gathered together happily, eating and chatting. It wasn't until the night gradually darkened that they all dispersed, somewhat tipsy. 2 days later the news of Murong Yixian and Feng Qingge's engagement being annulled spread throughout Yunhua City. Once the news spread, some people rejoiced in their misfortune while others clapped their hands and cheered. It could be said that most people didn't think highly of their engagement. Now that the engagement was annulled, everyone was secretly happy. After all, from their point of view, Feng Qingge wasn't worthy of a genius like the third prince. For a man like him, the power behind the woman by his side and her own strength must be extremely outstanding. Otherwise, looks alone would be useless. Everyone felt that Feng Qingge wasn't worthy of Murong Yixian. Only the people of Feng Manor felt that Murong Yixian wasn't worthy of Feng Qingge. Thus, when the commoners outside were discussing this, the guards and servants in Feng Manor were all indignant. From their point of view, the eldest young miss was stronger than anyone else. More than anyone else. Feng Zhou, who was in the courtyard, didn't take this matter to heart. She only needed to know that the engagement was cancelled. At this time, all her thoughts were on the book in her hand. She had carefully studied it for 2 days. There were also some elixirs in her space. Now, she just needed to start learning from the simplest alchemy. If she wanted to break through to the foundation establishment stage, she needed a foundation establishment pill. It was too impractical to buy one. Not to mention that it was difficult to find a foundation establishment pill in the country of Glorious Sun. Even if there was one, she felt that it wouldn't be as reassuring as one that she refined herself. Moreover, in the book her master had given her, there was a mention of a perfect foundation. It was a foundation that was 1 in 10,000. If she could achieve a perfect foundation, then she would have a good foundation for entering the Golden Core stage or even the Nascent Soul stage. Chapter 293. Feng Xiao walked in and saw her reading in the courtyard. A loving and doting smile appeared on his dignified face. "What are you reading? Why are you reading so seriously?" "Father." She closed the book and stood up. She smiled slyly at him. "I'm just researching something new." "So mysterious." "All right, Father won't ask. I just came to see you and tell you that the small courtyard you wanted has been cleared out. Also, what are you going to do with that courtyard? Do you need to add something to it?" "No need, it's fine as long as it's empty." She smiled and said, "I'll be busy for a while. I'll have to trouble Father to take care of Yang Yang." "Don't worry. That child is very obedient. I've hired someone to teach him how to read and write. After a while, I'll teach him the horse stance to build the foundation. Let's go. Father will accompany you to see the courtyard. If there's anything you're not satisfied with, I'll have someone tear it down." "All right." She smiled and walked out with him. When the two of them walked to the rockery in the residence, they heard laughter from afar. Looking up, they saw the snow-white but chubby Lao Bai playing with several servant girls. Seeing this scene, Feng Xiao smiled and said, "Old Bai originally asked the servants to tie it up in the stable, but who knew that it couldn't stay there? These 2 days, I asked someone to untie it and let it wander around the mansion by itself." Looking at Lao Bai, who was lying on the ground with its 4 paws in the air and allowing the maidservants to stroke its belly, he shook his head and said with a smile, "You don't say, this Lao Bai is extremely intelligent. I see that it likes to get close to the maidservants when it has nothing to do, but it also looks down on the guards. It's really strange. Even the old master said that he has never seen a dragon horse like Lao Bai." Feng Zhou glanced at Lao Bai, who was lying on all fours with its belly exposed. He was speechless. Lao Bai is such a pervert. When I met him, no matter how much his previous owner tried to pull him away, he wouldn't leave. Who knew that once he met me, he would immediately come over and chase me all the way? Later, his previous owner said that he would give him to me. As the two approached, the maidservants hurriedly stood up and respectfully bowed. They called out in a low voice, "Master, Mississippi, hiss." White stood up from the ground and was about to approach Feng Zhou, but he was stopped by Feng Xiao. Hey, you dragon horse, don't try to get close to my daughter." Feng Zhou, who was standing at the back, could not help but chuckle when he saw his father's sturdy body blocking Lao Bai from approaching. "Father, you should stop here. I can go to the courtyard by myself." She walked out from the back, and when she passed by Lao Bai, she glanced at the fat Lao Bai. She turned around with a smile and said, "Lao Bai, don't let him eat too much. He needs to lose some weight." Don't worry about that. Leave it to me. I'll take him out for a few laps later. Feng Xiao laughed loudly and indicated for her to leave. He stayed behind and led Lao Bai to the other side. After Fingzhou arrived at the courtyard, he took out the alchemy cauldron and some elixirs that he had swindled from the Yama Lord. He wanted to start with the simplest and most common elixirs. He stayed in the courtyard for 4 to 6 hours. Chapter 294. They saw a cloud of smoke rising from one of the courtyards, accompanied by an unpleasant burnt smell. Everyone couldn't help but be stunned. That seems to be the courtyard that Eldest Miss ordered people to clear out. Eldest Miss went in this morning and hasn't come out yet. Heavens! Could something have happened to her? Thinking of this, the maidservants and guards all ran towards the courtyard, afraid that something had happened to their eldest Mississippi. What's going on? What happened? Old Master Feng also ran out when he heard the commotion. He looked around and when he saw smoke rising from one of the courtyards, he was even more stunned. What's going on over there? Old Master, that's the courtyard that Eldest Miss ordered people to clear out. Eldest Miss went in this morning and hasn't come out yet. The loud noise just now came from that courtyard. It seems like something exploded. The steward who ran over hurriedly explained. Just as he finished speaking, he saw the old master holding his robe with one hand and running towards the courtyard as if he was flying. Seeing this, he was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly followed. When everyone hurriedly arrived at the courtyard and saw the scene inside through the courtyard door, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. They saw their beautiful eldest miss sitting on the ground with her body completely black and dirty. The original color of the casual clothes she wore in the residence could no longer be seen. Her ink-black hair was splattered with black powders and medicinal dregs. It seemed that the ends of her hair were slightly curled due to the high temperature. Her face was also black and white. She looked extremely miserable as she sat on the ground and coughed. Waves of smoke rose from the room in front of her. What's going on? Everyone stared blankly. Someone recovered first and shouted, "Eldest Miss, are you all right?" Cough cough, cough cough cough. Fingzhou, who had been ejected, sat on the ground. She waved away the smoke from the room in front of her with one hand while covering her nose and mouth as she coughed. She slowly stood up and turned around to see many people outside the courtyard. She waved her hand at them. "I'm fine. You don't have to crowd around there. Go do what you need to do." After saying this, she walked towards the pill room that was emitting scorched smoke. The first time she refined pills, the lid directly exploded. The air in the alchemy furnace, along with the dozens of elixirs she used, spurted out. Even she couldn't avoid it in time and was ejected by the air, causing her to be dirty and messy. She opened the window to let the smoke disperse. When she saw the scattered medicinal dregs on the ground, her face filled with pain. What a waste. It's a lot of money to buy them. Feng lass, are you all right? The old man, who had rushed over from outside, entered the courtyard and headed towards the pill room. The housekeeper stood guard at the entrance of the courtyard, while the others had already dispersed. When she turned around and saw him, she rubbed her nose and said with a smile, "Grandpa, I'm fine. I just wasted a furnace of good medicine." Fingzhou's S. Fingzhou of the eldest of Fingzhou, the of Fingzhou S is Fingzhou TT. TT test T of A. I'm learning. See, this furnace is ruined. She helplessly shrugged. It's easy to talk about it on paper, but it's difficult to implement it. Chapter 295. Yes, I can definitely do it. She smiled slyly and said, "But grandfather, no one is allowed to enter my courtyard. Go back and tell the servants that even if it's my father, it's best not to let him in." "Ah, all right, that's not a problem. Your father took Old White out for a stroll and isn't in the estate right now. If he were here, he would have rushed over already. He smiled and looked at the chaotic pill room. He asked, "Do you want someone to come and help you? When Ling Shuang comes back, she can come over." "All right then. Be careful, don't hurt yourself," he said worriedly. "Yes, I will." Her heart warmed. After sending him out, she returned to the pill room to tidy up and reorganize the reasons for her previous failure. After a long time, she stood in front of the pill furnace and used the spiritual power in her body to ignite the flames under the furnace. After the flames flew to the bottom of the furnace, she retracted her hand and controlled the strength of the flames under the furnace while paying attention to the temperature of the pill furnace. The first batch was fine at the beginning, but there was a problem at the end when the pills were condensed. It was probably because she didn't control the flames and spiritual power well. After her first failure, no matter how carefully she thought about this cauldron, she did not dare to be careless. However, after about 4 hours, the cauldron began to vibrate. She was slightly stunned when she saw it, and in the next moment, she broke into a run. Bang! Smoke filled the courtyard again. This time, the people in the estate were only stunned for a moment before continuing to do their own things. This was because the old master had said that they didn't need to care about the eldest Mrs. Courtyard and didn't need to look. However, they were still curious. What was the eldest miss doing in there? Why was there another explosion? As for the pill room, Fengjiu was really going all out. She rested in the courtyard for a while and watched the smoke dissipate. Then, she walked in again. This time, even the pill furnace fell down. Seeing this, the corner of her mouth twitched. It was a good thing that the things she used to trick the Yama Lord were all first class. Otherwise, it would have been destroyed long ago. This competition lasted until evening. However, an entire day had passed and she hadn't been able to refine a single pill. Moreover, she had wasted a lot of spiritual herbs, so she didn't have enough left in her space. When Ling Shuang, who had just returned to the mansion, heard a loud bang, her footsteps paused slightly. Seeing that the guards and maidservants in the mansion were all used to it, she looked towards the remote courtyard and thought to herself, "It should be Master refining elixirs, right?" When he arrived outside the courtyard, he saw his master coughing from the smoke. He called out, "Master, I'm back." She went to the black market today but was delayed by something. Ling Shuang. "It's good that you're back." She walked up to the door of the courtyard, took out a prescription and a crystal card, and handed them to her. "Go to the black market and buy me 20 portions of each of the spiritual herbs listed here. I want 30 portions of the scarlet grass on the top. There's money inside, take it and buy it." "Yes." Ling Shuang didn't ask any more questions. He took it and quickly went to the black market again. What no one expected was that she was so focused on refining pills. She failed again and again, but tried again and again. She didn't give up, only stubbornness. She only thought that she didn't believe that she couldn't refine a batch of high-quality pills. Chapter 296. "Father, do you think that child, Chinga, has been inside for 3 days and 3 nights? Could something have happened to her? Why don't I go in and take a look?" Feng Xiao said worriedly. He, who was standing outside the courtyard, was stopped from entering. Therefore, he did not know what the situation in the room was like. Master Feng glanced at him and said, "Can't you see that I'm also standing here and waiting?" Little Feng said that no one is to go in and disturb her. She will come out when she wants to. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Although he said that, his eyes kept glancing at the courtyard from time to time. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't worried or anxious. It had been 3 days and 3 nights. That girl didn't go back to rest except when Ling Shuang brought her food. How could she endure like this? After thinking for a while, he looked at Ling Shuang, who was standing guard in the courtyard, and said, "Go and see if she wants to come out." However, Ling Shuang didn't move and said, "Master ordered me to stand guard here." I can't disturb her unless she calls me. After a pause, she said, Old master, you should go back first. I'm here to guard this place. Nothing will happen. Ah. All right then. If anything happens, you must let us know. Old Master Feng said and turned to walk back. However, he saw that Feng Shao was still standing there and said, Let's go. What are you standing there for? You're poor in your own home. What are you worried about? Feng Shao looked at him speechlessly and thought to herself, he's obviously worried too, but he's still talking about me. However, she didn't continue to stand guard outside the courtyard and left with Master Feng. After watching the two leave, Ling Shuang withdrew her gaze and quietly stood guard, not allowing anyone to come close. After about 2 hours, she smelled a strong medicinal fragrance in the air. She couldn't help but be surprised and looked towards the pill room. Master, you've succeeded. If it was a concoction of medicine, the smell would not be so rich and fragrant. Moreover, the smell of the medicine made people feel refreshed, as if all the exhaustion in their body had disappeared. They were really curious, what was the effect of the medicine that Master had refined? However, at this time, in the elixir room, Fengzhou, who was dirty and had sweat on her forehead, held her breath and controlled the last flame to condense the pill. Although she smelled the fragrance of Chinese medicine in the air, she did not dare to be careless. It wasn't until the final step of condensing the pill that she heaved a sigh of relief. However, she was startled by a sudden bolt of lightning that fell from the sky. Boom! The first bolt of lightning struck down from the sky with a loud rumble. It penetrated the house and struck the pill furnace. She was so shocked that she immediately retreated. Her eyes widened in astonishment and shock. This is Danqing attracting lightning. She was shocked and astonished. She raised her head in disbelief to look at the hole in the roof. Through the hole, she could see the clouds in the clear sky and the rumbling of thunder. Oh no! Thunder in the middle of the day, with such a big commotion, it will definitely alarm everyone. She muttered, her mind working quickly. Boom! When the second bolt of lightning struck, it was just as Fengzhou had said. The sudden thunder in the middle of the day alarmed all the factions in Yunhua City. Even the monarch in the imperial palace was alarmed. No one sent anyone to investigate. Instead, they all moved out and rushed towards the source of the lightning. When Master Feng in the Feng Manor heard the sound of the lightning, his expression changed greatly. He could be considered an experienced old man and naturally knew how big of a matter it was to attract lightning. Chapter 297. Feng Shao, who had heard the commotion in the manor, naturally knew that something big had happened in the manor. Also, he figured that it had something to do with the things his daughter had been fiddling with over the past few days. Thus, when he heard the old man's loud shout, his powerful voice filled with Xian Qi was also heard. Feng Manor's guards, listen to my orders. Guard the Feng Manor. Don't let a single fly in. The hearts of the guards that had rushed out of the manor trembled. They immediately prepared themselves for battle and replied in a deep voice, yes. The sonorous and powerful voice filled with battle intent rang out in the various courtyards of the Feng Manor. Some of these guards were originally standing guard in the courtyards, some were standing guard in the corridors, some were standing guard in the rockery, and some were hidden in the shadows. However, when they heard the old man and Feng Zhao's voices, they were like blood-soaked soldiers that had heard a military order. They quickly rushed to the walls of the Feng Manor's courtyards to prevent anyone from breaking in. The servants of the manor had been ordered by the housekeeper to stand guard in the courtyards. They looked at the dark clouds in the sky above the courtyard with shock and uncertainty, as well as the sudden clap of thunder. Their hearts were filled with shock. Thunder on a sunny day. They had actually seen such a strange thing. Also, it seemed to be related to their eldest young miss. Chiu, who had been lazily lying on the rockery and basking in the warm morning sun, could not help but sit up straight when he saw the sudden clap of thunder in the sky. His sharp and bloodthirsty eyes were filled with shock, and he immediately ran towards the courtyard. Attracting heavenly lightning in the middle of the day. What was that woman doing? Not only did Chio Chio run over, even old Bai, who had been trying to hide under the servant girl's skirt, raised his head slightly and glanced at the sky. He sniffed with his nose and also ran towards the courtyard. Boom! Following the third bolt of heavenly lightning, the dark clouds in the sky scattered. The Feng Manor seemed to have regained its calm in an instant, but everyone knew that a problem had arisen. That was because the people that had rushed over from all directions had arrived outside the Feng Manor's gates. They were either shocked, startled, surprised, or incredulous as they looked at the tightly shut gates of the Feng Manor. Thunder on a clear day, and 3 bolts of lightning at that. What exactly happened in the Feng Manor? Everyone wanted to know, but the Feng Manor was not a normal family. The Feng Manor's gates were tightly shut. Even if they were curious, they did not dare and could not enter without the master's permission. What do you think happened in the Feng Manor? Why would it attract heavenly lightning? Who knows? The Feng Manor's gates are tightly shut. Who dares to knock on the door at this time? I'm afraid people won't say anything even if I knock. But I'm really curious. What exactly happened? Look! Isn't that the monarch? He actually came in person. One of the patriarchs exclaimed in a low voice, gesturing for everyone to look at the figure that was flying towards them. Another family head pondered and said, even the king personally came. It can be seen that this matter is not trivial. I think the Feng family's door will definitely open. And, that's right. It's just that we cannot enter the Feng Manor, but the king will definitely be able to enter. In the midst of everyone's whispers, the king, Murongbo, stepped onto the roof of a restaurant, but he could only vaguely see the roof of the Feng Manor's courtyard. He could not see the situation inside, but he was certain that the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning had indeed been attracted by the Feng Manor. Chapter 298. Who is knocking on the door? A low and dignified voice came from inside the door. That was Feng Zhao's voice. It was firm and dignified. Feng Zhao, open the door. Murongbo's deep and dignified voice also came from outside. His voice carried the aura of an expert, and the tone of his voice was one of command. Hearing the voice from outside, Feng Zhao, who was holding a large blade and sitting calmly inside the door, slightly furrowed his brow. His dignified face sank, and he hesitated for a moment. His firm voice carried an apologetic tone. Country lord, please forgive this official for not being able to obey. When Murongbo heard this, his brow slightly furrowed. He was a bit angry from the humiliation. He, the dignified ruler of a country, had personally come, yet he was refused entry. Not only was Murongbo angry from the humiliation, even the people not far away who had not come forward were stunned. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that Feng Zhao would dare to refuse the country lord? Wasn't this too daring? It had to be known that the Feng Manor was not the same as the other families. Aside from being the head of the Feng Manor, Feng Zhao was also the mighty general of the country of Glorious Sunday. He was Murongbo's subordinate. Refusing to obey an order could be a big or small matter. Feng Zhao. Do you know what you are saying? Murongbo's face sank, and his voice carried a bit of coldness and anger. Just as the atmosphere outside the Feng Manor's door was tense and dangerous, Fengjiu opened the pill furnace in the pill room. Seeing the 3 brownish-red pills inside, she revealed a happy and excited smile. She had succeeded. Without anyone to guide her, she relied on her experience and understanding of medicine. She relied on the simple steps in the book to figure out the method of refining the pills. After spending 3 days and 3 nights and wasting quite a few spirit medicines, she had finally succeeded. She took out the 3 pills and placed them on the table to the side to observe. She saw that the pills were filled with spiritual energy, and 5 pill markings appeared on the small pills. They were clearly visible. It really is 5 pill markings. No wonder it could attract heavenly lightning to temper the pills. As she spoke, she was pleasantly surprised as she looked at the pill veins on the pill. He didn't expect that the first batch of pills he refined would be of such a high grade. According to the records in the book, only pills with 5 pill patterns or more could attract heavenly lightning. Not to mention that this was in the Tier 9 country of Glorious Sun. Even in the Tier 6 country of Greenting, it was extremely difficult to find a pill with 5 patterns. This is great. After wasting so many spiritual herbs, I finally won't suffer a loss. She chuckled and took out a bottle. She put the 3 pills into 3 separate bottles and put them into her space. Then, she put away the pill furnace and walked out of the pill room. The Fong family patriarch, who was standing guard outside the courtyard, saw her come out and immediately asked, "Fong girl, have you finished concocting that pill of yours? Those 3 bolts of lightning have alarmed everyone. Even the monarch has come running. Your father is guarding the gate, but I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on for long." Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed. He walked towards the old man and said to Ling Shuang, "Clean up the place." "Yes." Ling Shuang complied, then walked towards the pill room. "Grandfather, it's fine. There's no need to worry. With our Feng Manor's reputation, no one dares to force their way in." Chapter 299. Hearing this, the old man's eyes lit up. He was so excited that even his voice began to tremble. "I heard that only pills with 5 pill patterns or more can attract the heavenly lightning. Could it be that your pill has 5 pill patterns?" It is a 5 pill pattern fortune pill," she replied with a slight smile. Looking at the excited expression on his face, she said, "Grandfather, go ahead and take a look. I will go back to take a bath and change my clothes. Tell the servants to be strict. Even if the country's lord asks, they are not to say anything." Although the old man did not know what effects the fortune pill had, his heart was currently filled with joy. "You are correct. Based on our Feng Manor's prestige, outsiders will not dare to barge in. Even if it is the country's lord, he would not be able to lower himself to barge into an official's home. You should go change first. Grandfather will go ahead and take a look at the situation." He hurriedly said this. After adjusting his expression, he walked towards the front yard. Seeing this, Fengjiu also walked towards the front yard and ordered people to prepare water for a bath. At this time, in front of the Feng Manor's main gate, Murongbo's anger had already reached its peak. He had thought of kicking open the Feng Manor's main gate or jumping over the wall to get in, but his status and pride did not allow him to do such a thing that was beneath his status. However, he could not swallow this anger. Because of this, the atmosphere became extremely tense. At this time, the front door that had been tightly shut opened with a creak. Old Master Feng came out with a smile and a bit of an apologetic expression. As for the stern-faced Feng Shao, he followed behind him with his head lowered. It was as if he had been scolded. "Ah! It's all this old man's fault. This old man had Feng Shao guard the front door and not let anyone in. I really did not think that even the country's lord would be alarmed. I even refused to let the country's lord in. I truly was disrespectful." Old Master Feng repeatedly cupped his hands and apologized. As he spoke, he walked over to the country's lord. "Country's lord, please come in." Old Master Feng gestured for him to enter and stepped to the side to allow him to enter. Murongbo glanced at Feng Shao with a gloomy face. He flicked his sleeves and snorted heavily before walking in. Not far away, everyone had different expressions when they saw this scene. Someone rushed forward and called out to Old Master Feng, who was about to step in. "Old Master, please wait." The old man turned around and looked at the two middle-aged men behind him. Seeing that they were the two clan leaders of the big clans in Yunhua City, he smiled and asked, "What's the matter, clan leaders?" Hearing this, the two of them cursed inwardly. Isn't this asking the obvious? How could he not know what they were up to? Even though this was the case, there was not the slightest trace of a smile on his face as he said, "It's like this. We saw 3 bolts of heavenly lightning fall in the Foam Manor's courtyard. I wonder what attracted the heavenly lightning? Old Master, can you satisfy our curiosity?" Old Master Feng stopped and stroked his beard as he looked at the two. His gaze swept past the people who had not come up but were waiting for an answer. He revealed a smile. One sentence was enough to make them choke. As the saying goes, curiosity kills the cat. The two of you are not young anymore. It's best if you don't be curious about things. Seeing Old Master Feng turn and walk in, the two clan leaders' faces turned red. They silently stared at the slowly closing Foam Manor's front door for a long time. Chapter 300. But thinking about it, how could the Foam Manor's position be lower than any of the aristocratic families in Yunhua City? Thinking of the power behind the Foam Manor, the two who were originally a bit angry felt relieved. Even the king had been refused entry earlier, so what could they do? Since the king had gone in, they should know very quickly what had attracted the heavenly lightning. Thus, there was no need to rush. At this time, in the Foam Manor's main hall, the king sat in the main seat with a dark expression. Although he did not say anything, it was clear that he still had a belly full of anger. "King, please drink some tea." After the servant brought the tea and left, the old man gestured for him to sit down. As for Feng Xiao, he stood at his side with his head slightly lowered. Bo glanced at the two and his expression relaxed. He picked up a teacup with one hand and used the other to gently scrape the tea leaves. After taking a sip, he said in a deep voice, "Speak. What was the matter with the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning?" However, after he asked this, he was met with silence. While drinking the tea, he frowned and looked at Old Master Feng. His eyes were filled with displeasure. "What? You can't say." Old Master Feng sighed and said apologetically, "King, I really can't say this because this old man doesn't know how to say it." Hearing this, Bo's originally relaxed expression sank again. His sharp and oppressive gaze swept over Old Master Feng and Feng Xiao. "Could it be that you think something that could attract the heavenly lightning is a small matter? Even if martial cultivators want to attract the heavenly lightning, they can only do so when their strength reaches the level of a martial emperor. Now that the Foam Manor has attracted 3 bolts of heavenly lightning, all of Yunhua City has been alarmed. Could it be that you don't owe this lord an explanation? I wonder what kind of explanation the king wants." A gentle voice with a bit of carelessness was heard, easing the oppressive atmosphere in the hall. Bo looked in the direction of the voice and saw Feng Qingge, who was dressed in white, walking in with graceful steps. She had an elegant aura and a peerlessly beautiful face. It was no wonder that his most outstanding son had fallen for her. When Old Master Feng saw her, he didn't say anything else. Instead, he sat there with half-closed eyes and sipped his tea. He seemed to have completely let her handle the situation. Seeing this, Feng Xiao moved his lips but did not say anything. He pretended to be dead just like the old man. Feng Jiu slowly walked into the hall. When he arrived at the center of the hall, he bowed slightly and then stood there quietly looking at Bo, who had occupied the master's seat. Perhaps it was because they had been in power for a long time and had become accustomed to being in charge. They were accustomed to using a commanding tone to give orders, just like the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning that she had attracted. If it was anyone else, they would not dare to ask. After all, this was a matter of the Foam Manor. If they did not say anything, who could do anything to them? After Bo heard her words, he furrowed his brow and said in a heavy voice, "What do you mean by this?" This lord has come because of the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. You just need to tell this lord the truth about the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. What's with all this nonsense? Chapter 301. Hearing this, Murongbo's sharp gaze coldly swept over her. Turning to look at Feng Xiao, he shouted in a deep voice, "Feng Xiao." This shout of Feng Xiao contained the pressure of a strong person and the aura of a superior. Almost as soon as his voice came out, a profound aura visible to the naked eye filled the whole. It was extremely stifling, and it also caused Feng Xiao, who had been doing his best to reduce his presence, to finally walk out. This official is present. Murongbo could not get angry at Old Master Feng because that was the Feng Manor's old master. Even if he was the ruler of a country, he still had to respect the teachings of his ancestors because Old Master Feng was an elder from his father's generation. Even if he got angry, he could not direct it at him. As for Feng Qinggu, she was only Feng Xiao's daughter and the Feng Manor's eldest young miss. First, she was not his official. Second, she was not his daughter-in-law. Adding on the fact that she was from the younger generation, rather than getting angry at her, it would be better to directly question Feng Xiao. He glanced at Feng Xiao, who was respectfully bowing, and directly asked, "What is going on with these 3 bolts of heavenly lightning?" Feng Xiao raised his head and glanced at Murongbo. He shook his head with a blank expression. This official also does not know what is going on. He really did not know. When he had heard the heavenly lightning, he had run out of the courtyard and heard the old man's orders. How could he know what was going on with the heavenly lightning? However, this was still his family's matter, and it could not be separated from his precious daughter. Thus, even if he knew, he had to say that he did not know. When the already angry Murongbo heard this, he immediately slammed the teacup in his hand onto the table. He stood up and left with a gloomy expression without saying a single word. His sudden action caused the 3 people in the hall to be slightly surprised, but they did not say anything. They only watched him leave. "Qinggu, what exactly is going on? What exactly were you doing in that room? Why would it attract heavenly thunder?" Feng Xiao asked. He had some guesses in his heart, but he wasn't sure. There were only 3 situations that could attract heavenly lightning. The first was a treasure falling from the sky, the second was a breakthrough in cultivation, and the third was a rare pill. However, all 3 of these situations were inconceivable to him. Therefore, he was at a loss. "Ling Shuang, guard the door and don't let anyone get close," Feng Jiu ordered. "Yes." The Ling Shuang outside responded and stood guard at the door. Seeing this, Feng Xiao could not help but feel nervous. Looking at his daughter who had a happy smile on her face, he only felt that a thought in his heart was about to be confirmed. He was a little nervous and a little excited. "Grandfather, father, please take a seat." She gestured and pulled Feng Xiao, who was still in a daze, to a seat. Then, she moved a chair to sit between the 2 of them. She then took out a bottle from her space and poured a pill into her palm. "Look, this is the nature pill. It has 5 elixir veins. It attracted the 3 heavenly thunder." The old man had lived for a long time, but this was the first time he saw a pill with 5 elixir veins. Moreover, it was refined by his granddaughter. At this moment, he could only feel the blood in his body boiling. He was so excited that his face flushed red and his hands trembled. "Good, good, good. Little Feng, you've made grandfather proud." Compared to the old man who could still speak, Feng Xiao was completely stunned. His eyes were wide open and he could only feel the blood rushing to his brain. In the next moment, he fainted because he was too excited. Chapter 302. Old Master Feng laughed and scolded, "What a good-for-nothing." Feng Jiu was stunned, and then he couldn't help but laugh. He shouted, "Ling Shuang, call 2 people in to help my father back to rest." Ling Shuang, who was outside, responded. She then called 2 guards in and helped Feng Xiao back to the courtyard. In the hall, Fengjiu handed the bottle of fate pill to the old master. He smiled and said, "Grandpa, this fate pill is for you." "For me?" The old master was slightly stunned, and then he waved his hand. "How can this be? You haven't slept for 3 days and 3 nights because of this pill, and you must have destroyed a lot of herbs. You should keep this for yourself. I'm already so old, and this pill is useless to me." "Who said it's useless?" She smiled slyly and said, "Grandpa, you still don't know the effect of this fate pill." She paused and said, "Do you know that a fate pill can remove the impurities left in the body over the years, refine the muscles and bones, and expand the tendons and meridians? Not only that, because the impurities in the body are removed, the bones and meridians will be refined, and the speed of practice will be greatly improved within 2 months. Moreover, Grandpa is now a martial arts grandmaster at stage 8 of the initial stage of the Black Realm. If you take the fate pill, I believe you can break through the threshold of the initial stage of the martial arts grandmaster realm and enter the peak stage in 2 months." Hearing this, the old master's eyes widened in disbelief. He said in surprise, This fate pill really has such a magical effect." "Of course, this little pill is made with more than a dozen precious spiritual herbs, and it's a pill with 5 elixir veins. Of course it has such an effect." She smiled and put the bottle in his hand. She said, "Besides, if you don't believe me, why don't you try it? But you worked so hard to refine this one. If you give it to Grandpa, won't it be?" Hearing this, she moved closer to him and mysteriously said, "Grandpa, I'll tell you a secret. I've refined 3 pills. When I get back, I'll give one to Father. The remaining one will be auctioned off in the black market. When the time comes, I'll buy more spiritual herbs and refine more pills." Hearing this, the old man smiled happily and replied, Okay. Grandpa will accept it." Looking at his granddaughter who was getting more and more capable, he said with gratification, "Little Feng, you're getting more and more amazing. If people knew that she could actually refine a revival pill with 5 pill veins, it would definitely cause 1,000 ripples." She was still so young and didn't know the dangers of the world. If someone with ulterior motives found out and wanted to kill her in the cradle, then, thinking of this, the smile on his face disappeared. He said seriously, "Little Feng, you should know that hiding your strength is better to protect yourself than showing off. You can only trust some of the people you meet. You're still young and already have the reputation of the ghost doctor. If you take out this fate pill with 5 spiritual breaths, it's hard to guarantee that the power behind the black market won't have any evil intentions. Therefore, I suggest that you don't show this fate pill to the world. If you really want to show it, you can't do it in a small 9th-class country like Yaori. Otherwise, I'm afraid that once this pill appears, trouble will follow." Chapter 303. How could the old man not understand the hidden meaning behind her words? Since ancient times, what the emperor dislikes the most are officials whose achievements overshadow the emperor's. Moreover, it's a power like our Feng manor. After today's matter, I fear that our Feng family will not be the slightest bit dissatisfied with the emperor. This sort of blatant disregard of the emperor's orders had definitely left a thorn in Murongbo's heart. However, there was nothing they could do about today's matter. If they reported the truth and let him know that the Feng girl was the ghost doctor and was also a pill refiner, perhaps the Feng girl would definitely be controlled by Murongbo and become the imperial family's pill refiner. After all, as the head of a clan, he was very clear that for those in power, if they knew that such a pill refiner existed, they would definitely pull her into their clan and work for them. The tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. It was because he deeply understood this principle that when he saw the 3 bolts of lightning, he ordered Feng Xiao to guard the gate. Whoever dared to force their way in was to be killed without mercy. This was because he was very clear that if others knew that his granddaughter could refine pills, even the Feng family would not be able to protect her. It was also because of this that when he found out about her outstanding talent, he only wanted to think of a way to hide this shocking talent of hers. Before she became strong enough, they would do their best to protect her, so that she could conserve her energy and be in the best condition for the day when she shone brightly. And as they had guessed, Murongbo, who had returned to the palace, could not hide the anger in his heart. With a wave of his hand, he swept the things on the table to the ground. With a gloomy expression, he sat down. A murderous intent flashed through his cold eyes. It was so fast that no one could detect it. What exactly was the Foam Manor hiding? There were only a few possibilities that could attract 3 bolts of lightning, but no matter which one it was, he could not accept it. The current Foam Manor's power was already too great, especially the Foam Guards. They were already more than enough to surpass the Imperial family's Imperial Guards. This sort of power, if used well, would be a sharp sword against the enemy. If used poorly, the sharp blade would be directed at him. The matter of the 3 bolts of lightning seemed to have passed by peacefully. However, that was not the case. Although nobody went to the Foam Manor to inquire about the matter, they continued to think about it. Even the citizens on the streets would talk about the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning during the day. It was just that although this topic was discussed in low voices, nobody brought it up again. It was as if they had purposely covered it up and ignored it. Even Murongbo didn't send anyone to inquire about it during this period of time, nor did he summon Feng Shao. As for Murong Yixian, he had been cultivating in seclusion ever since his engagement with Feng Jiu was annulled, so he didn't hear about this matter. This, Murongbo. Chapter 304. When Feng Shao rushed to the Imperial Palace, he was stopped before he could even enter the Imperial Palace. General Feng, the monarch has given orders. The Imperial Edict will be sent to the Foam Manor in a moment. General Feng, please return. 8 Imperial guards blocked Feng Zhao's steps, not allowing him to enter the Imperial Palace. Bullshit. Anger attacked his heart and he even cursed. His imposing tiger eyes angrily glared at the 8 Imperial guards blocking his way. He shouted in a deep voice, "Get out of my way. I want to enter the Imperial Palace to see the monarch." The 8 people couldn't help but smile bitterly and say, "General Feng, please don't make things difficult for us. The monarch ordered us to wait here for General Feng because he doesn't want to see you. If you force your way in, I'm afraid that our heads will roll in the end." With their strength, it was impossible for them to stop Feng Shao. However, the monarch had ordered them to guard this place and not let Feng Shao enter because of this. If they let Feng Shao in, they would have to pay with their lives. Damn it! Feng Shao was furious. Seeing that the Imperial Palace was right in front of him but he couldn't enter, this kind of grievance made him want to curse. Just as he was about to turn around and return to the manor, he saw a figure walk out from inside. He immediately shouted, "Third Prince." Murong Yixian was deep in thought when he suddenly heard Feng Zhao's voice. He raised his head and walked towards him with large strides. "Uncle Shao, do you want to enter the Imperial Palace to see my Lord Father?" "I want to enter, but I can't." He glanced at the 8 people. Seeing this, the 8 people all lowered their heads. Murong Yixian glanced at the 8 generals and said to Feng Shao, "Uncle Shao, let's find a place to talk." "That's fine." Seeing that he couldn't enter the Imperial Palace, he could only try to get information from Murong Yixian. What did the monarch mean by this? He originally wanted to find a restaurant nearby but felt that it was inappropriate. Thus, he went to the Foam Manor in the end. In the Foam Manor's main hall, without waiting for Feng Shao to speak, Murong Yixian asked, "Uncle Shao, is Qinggu home? Does she know about this?" "She's not home. She went out and hasn't returned yet." It was because his precious daughter was not home, and the father and son were both in seclusion. That was why he was the only one guarding the Foam Manor. Now that something like this had happened, neither of them knew about it. Initially, he wanted to get to the bottom of this matter before they found out about it. Who knew that he couldn't even meet the monarch? Thinking of this, his stomach was filled with anger again. What's going on with your father? How can you make such a decision on your own without asking us? If Chinga finds out about this, I don't know what will happen. He's just messing around. Murong Yixian pursed his lips and said, after I heard the news, I immediately went to the palace to try and stop it. However, I saw that my father seemed to have made up his mind. I'm afraid there's no turning back. Otherwise, he wouldn't refuse to see you. We will never agree to this. Feng Xiao stood up and said to Murong Yixian, since I can't meet the monarch, I'll have to ask Third Prince to pass on the message. Our Feng family only has one child, Qin Gu. How can we agree to this? Murong Yixian was deep in thought. Just as he was about to speak, he heard the voice of an imperial decree come from outside. The imperial decree has arrived. Feng Qin Gu, receive the decree. Chapter 305. Hearing this, the middle-aged prime minister chuckled, General Feng, why are you so angry? You have to know that this is a good thing that many people can't even wait for. That Enchanting kingdom is a sixth-tier kingdom. To be able to have a marriage relationship with them is a good fortune that some people can't cultivate for several lifetimes. Moreover, the one who sent people to propose marriage is His Highness the Crown Prince of Enchanting Kingdom. That is the future king of Enchanting Kingdom. Even if it is only to be his concubine, it is still a supreme honor. Bullshit. My, Feng Zhao's, beloved daughter is going to be someone's concubine. Or is it a supreme honor? Since it is such a good thing, why don't you send your daughter over? Feng Xiao exploded in anger. As he was standing in front of the Prime Minister, he directly sprayed saliva on the Prime Minister's face, causing the Prime Minister's face to turn green and red. The Prime Minister wiped his face and wiped away the saliva that had splashed on his face. He secretly cursed, this Feng Xiao is a complete boorish man. He was secretly angry, but he also remembered the mission of this trip. Thus, he sternly said, this marriage is not only a matter of your Feng family, it is related to the relationship between the two kingdoms. You have to know that Enchanting Kingdom is a sixth-tier mid-tier kingdom. Its military strength is not comparable to 10 glorious Sun kingdoms. If there is any mishap in this marriage, do you know that our glorious Sun kingdom will be consigned to eternal damnation at any time? Then there is no reason to send my daughter to be someone's concubine. Moreover, I have already promised to let her decide on her marriage. No one can interfere. Seeing that Feng Xiao was being unreasonable, the Prime Minister thought that he had already said all the good things, but talking to this Feng Xiao was simply playing the lute to a cow. He didn't care anymore and said, since your daughter is not at home, then it is the same if you accept the imperial edict. As he spoke, he opened the imperial edict and was about to read it out. Who would have thought that his actions would anger Feng Xiao? Without saying anything, Feng Xiao stepped forward and grabbed his collar. Feng Xiao. What are you doing? Put me down. His strength was not as good as Feng Xiao's. Now, he was suddenly grabbed by the collar and lifted up. His feet were off the ground, and his neck was strangled by the collar to the point that he could not breathe. His face was also flushed red. He waved his hands and struggled, but he could not hit him. I already said that I won't accept this decree, and you still dare to announce it to me. Feng Xiao angrily cursed. Grabbing him by the collar, he dragged him out and threw him out of the Feng Manor's gates. Scram back to where you came from. If you dare to come again, I'll break your legs. Once this was said, the Feng Manor's gates were closed with a bang. All that was left were the servants that had been chased out. Feng Xiao. You brute. I will definitely report you to the monarch. Sitting on the ground, the Prime Minister's robes were wrinkled and he looked to be in an extremely sorry state. Seeing the Feng Manor's gates close with a bang, he angrily cursed with a red face. After standing up, he straightened his robes and angrily headed for the imperial palace. A few people that were secretly paying attention to the Feng Manor's movements were secretly shocked. Could it be that Feng Shao wanted to go against the heavens? He actually dared to throw the prime minister out. Could it be that he wanted to refuse the imperial edict? In reality, in their eyes, being able to gain the favor of the crown prince of Enchanting country was an extremely good thing. After all, Enchanting country was not a normal country. Even if she was a secondary princess, her status was definitely different. Chapter 306. From their point of view, aside from Feng Qingji's beauty, her strength was nothing to be proud of. How could a woman that even third Prince Murong Yixian be worthy of Enchanting country's crown prince? In Feng Manor, Murong Yixian was also a bit stunned because he didn't think that not only did Feng Shao not accept the edict, he even threw the prime minister out. This was a blatant slap to his father emperor's face. With his father emperor's temper, he would probably fly into a rage after finding out. Humph! What great glory! My Feng family doesn't need this glory. Feng Shao angrily returned to the hall. Seeing that Murong Yixian was still standing in the courtyard, he said, "Third prince, you should also return. Steward, see the guest out." Perhaps it was because Murong Bo's actions made him angry, so he even felt that Murong Yixian was an eyesore. "Uncle Shao, wait a moment." Murong Yixian stopped him as he was about to leave and said, "Uncle Shao, my father emperor is the ruler of a country. Your actions today are really inappropriate." "My actions are inappropriate, but is your father emperor's actions correct? My Feng family has protected Yaori country for generations. Now, my Feng Manor only has Qinggu as the apple of my eye. He actually didn't even ask for our opinion and directly agreed to this marriage, sending my daughter to be someone's secondary princess." Listen carefully, a secondary princess. Who wants to be here? Murong Yixian also didn't feel good and said, "I think Father Emperor's actions can't be helped. After all, Enchanting country is a 6th-tier country. If they put pressure on us, our Yaori country can't withstand it. Alright, you don't need to say any more. In any case, I won't send my daughter to be someone's secondary princess." He waved his hand and didn't listen to him anymore as he walked away. "Third prince, please." The steward waiting at the side bowed and gestured for him to leave. Seeing this, Murong Yixian walked out. When he left the hall, his footsteps paused and he turned to ask the steward, "Did your eldest miss say where she went? When will she return?" The steward smiled and said apologetically, "We servants don't know this." Hearing this, Murong Yixian didn't ask any more and walked out of Feng Manor's door. In the imperial palace bang. After listening to the prime minister's report, Murong Bo slammed his hand heavily on the table. He stood up angrily and shouted, "Men! Capture Feng Shao and throw him into the prison." The prime minister, who was standing at the side, heard this and quickly stopped him. "Your Majesty, please calm down. This is absolutely impossible. This Feng Shao is too presumptuous. If I don't teach him a lesson, he will forget that he is still my subject." Murong Bo's face was full of anger as he said in a deep voice, he openly disobeyed orders and refused to accept the imperial edict. Just this alone is enough to punish him for the crime of disrespect. The prime minister sighed and said, "But my lord, this Feng Shao is not a normal person. The entire Feng family is guarded by him. If he is caught and thrown into the imperial prison, it will definitely cause a disturbance in the Feng Manor's power. This really cannot be done. Are we going to let him off so easily? Not bickering with him. Then where will this lord's face go?" The anger in his heart was hard to quell. Thinking of how he had been rejected outside the door and how he had disobeyed the imperial edict and challenged his authority again, his patience had reached its limit. Chapter 307. Hearing this, Murongbo began to laugh. Looking at the Prime Minister with praise, he said, "It is fortunate that you were at this lord's side to remind me. Otherwise, this lord would have definitely made a wrong decision in a fit of anger." The Prime Minister cupped his hands and smiled, saying, "To be able to share the country's worries is this official's honor." As for the other side, Fengzhou, who was refining pills in the Peach Blossom Cove, had a month of practice. She was already familiar with the steps of refining pills and was able to control the flames and spiritual energy. In the past month, she had only refined a single pill with 5 spiritual auras in the Feng Manor's inner courtyard. Because she was worried that it would attract the heavenly lightning and cause a disturbance, she had only refined pills with 5 spiritual auras and below. As for foundation establishment pills, they only appeared with 2 spiritual auras or 3 spiritual auras. There were even higher levels. However, they were considered rare goods and were rarely seen at auctions. The spiritual ingredients needed to refine foundation establishment pills were not particularly rare. On the contrary, those spiritual ingredients were rather common. However, to refine those spiritual ingredients into foundation establishment pills was not an easy matter. She had experimented in the past month. Out of 50 batches of foundation establishment pills, she had only succeeded in refining 2 batches. Furthermore, they only had 3 pill markings. 3 pill markings was not something she could use as she was preparing for a perfect foundation establishment pill. The lower the pill markings, the more poison there would be, and the medicinal effects would not be too strong. Thus, she needed foundation establishment pills with 5 pill markings or higher. Ling Shuang, who had just entered, glanced at his master refining pills in the courtyard and hesitated as to whether or not he should go forward. Putting away the blood-clotting pills he had refined into a bottle, Fengzhou did not raise her head and asked, "What is it? Is something the matter?" As she spoke, she placed the spiritual ingredients on the table into her space. She then put away the pill furnace. "Master, a piece of news has come from the city." She walked forward and said, "What news? Is it related to me?" Fengzhou raised her head and asked Ling Shuang. If it was not related to her, she figured that Ling Shuang would not be so hesitant. "It's related to Master." Ling Shuang paused for a moment before continuing. "The Crown Prince of the Enchanting Kingdom sent someone to the monarch to deliver a marriage proposal, stating that he wanted to marry Master as his concubine. The monarch agreed to this marriage without the permission of Old Master and Old Master." Fengzhou raised his eyebrows. "The Crown Prince of the Enchanting Kingdom? I don't think I know such a person." She was slightly surprised and asked, "What was my father's reaction?" When Old Master heard the news, he immediately rushed to the palace to meet the monarch. However, he couldn't even enter the palace gates. Later, when the monarch sent the Prime Minister to announce the decree, he was thrown out by Old Master. "That sounds like my dad's style of doing things." She couldn't help but chuckle. However, since the imperial edict didn't work, the monarch issued another imperial edict to inform everyone in the glorious Sun Nation that Mistress was conferred the title of Princess Qingning and the concubine of the Crown Prince of the Green Soaring Nation. Princess Qingning. Fengzhou chuckled. "This Murongbo is so sure that I will follow his arrangements. After creating so much trouble, it will be embarrassing if he can't get out of this embarrassing situation." Seeing that she didn't seem to care, Ling Shuang asked, "Master, do you need to go back to the residence to deal with this?" "I need to cultivate during this period of time, so let's put this matter aside for now. If I don't go back, I don't think he will be able to do anything," she said casually as she took out the pill that she had just refined and handed it to Ling Shuang. Chapter 308. In the next month, I'm going to practice in seclusion. You should pay more attention to the situation at home. Don't disturb me if there's nothing important," she told him and walked towards the courtyard. After Ling Shuang responded, he did not follow her. Instead, he tidied up the things in the elixir department and turned to leave. After returning to the courtyard, Fengjiu took a bath and flashed into the space. Her qi cultivation was only at the martial master level. She planned to raise her cultivation to the peak of the Black Realm in half a month. In this space, there was rich spiritual power to help her practice. Also, her potions could help her improve her strength. What's more, 3 days outside was equivalent to 1 day inside. This time difference was her advantage in practice. Therefore, she was confident that she could break through to the peak of the Black Realm in half a month and reach the great martial mentor. Seeing that the sleeping little fire phoenix showed no signs of waking up, she found a place to sit down and began to practice with her legs crossed. Time passed by without anyone noticing. What caused people to be curious was that the Feng Manor had not made any movements recently. They also rarely saw the Feng family's eldest young miss leave the manor. Only after asking around did they find out that the Feng family's eldest young miss was not in the manor, and Master Feng was in closed-door training. They thought that things would remain calm until Miss Feng returned, old Master Feng came out of seclusion, or the Crown Prince of the Enchanting Kingdom came in person to break the peace. However, they did not expect that under this peace, there was a murderous intent surging. Old White, let's go back home after a walk. Since Chinga is not home, how about I ask someone to give you an extra meal? On the mountain road, Feng Xiao, dressed in casual clothes, rode on Old White's back and took him for a walk. This was something he had to do every day recently. It was to help his daughter train Old White and reduce the fat on his body. Hiss. Hearing that there was an extra meal, Old White was very excited. His ponytail swung and even his rump shook, as if to tell him that this was a good idea and that he liked it. Ha ha ha. Okay, don't move around so that I don't fall off. Feng Xiao laughed heartily as he wrapped his legs around White's abdomen. He patted his head and said, actually, you have become much stronger these days. But even so, you can't cheat. You have to know that perseverance is the most important thing. Pfft. White exhaled 2 puffs of air from his nostrils, then stomped his hooves and slowly walked forward. Suddenly, the trees on both sides of the mountain path swayed without any wind, and the lush leaves rustled. This made White, who was originally walking forward, stop in his tracks. He looked around left and right, and with a hiss, he turned around and was about to walk back. Feng Xiao also noticed that something was not quite right. His originally relaxed face darkened at this moment. His sharp gaze swept around the surroundings as he said in a deep voice, "Which friend has come? Why don't you come out and meet us?" As soon as he spoke, the surroundings became still, and it was as if even the wind had become still. However, in the next moment, a sharp arrow shot out from the lush trees with a swish, and it shot towards Feng Xiao, who was riding on Senior White's back with a fierce and murderous aura. Pfft. Feng Xiao narrowed his eyes and dodged the sharp arrow. However, the second and third arrows came one after another with terrifying murderous intent. Pfft. Pfft. Clang. Clang. Chapter 309. Swoosh. The sharp arrow barely scratched his sleeve. It did not hurt his skin, but it tore his robe. The opponent's fierce killing intent made him not dare to be careless. He adjusted the Xian energy in his body, looked around, and entered a tense state to fight. After he swept away more than a dozen sharp arrows, 20 to 30 men in black rushed out. The leader was wearing a ghost mask, so people could not see his face clearly. However, the powerful aura on his body made Feng Xiao vigilant and suspicious. This kind of strength was extremely rare even in the entire country of Glorious Sunday. It was not something that could be easily asked to move. Then, who was this person? Why did he want to assassinate him? The leading black-clothed man's murderous gaze landed on Feng Xiao. He didn't say anything, but raised his hand and made a gesture. The surrounding black-clothed men rushed towards Feng Xiao in an instant. Long swords containing sharp profound energy auras attacked Feng Xiao. Sharp swords shot out from all around, emitting sharp killing intent. Streams of sword energy whistled through the air. Those men in black advanced and retreated in an orderly manner. Even when they attacked and some defended. Obviously, they had received strict training. Clang! Feng Shao waved the big saber in his hand, and a biting cold saber aura attacked with a whoosh, cutting the surrounding black-clothed men, forcing them to retreat a little. He rode on Lao Bai's back and did not want to fight. After opening a path, he shouted in a deep voice, "Lao Bai! Let's go!" He reined in the horse and was about to run away. However, when he was about to turn around, two masked gray-robed old men suddenly appeared in the air and struck out with their palms with the force of thunder. In an instant, the wind from the palms of the two men cut through the air with a powerful sound of airflow. The aura of Xian energy that was visible to the naked eye filled their palms. They were so fast and fierce that Feng Shao did not have time to defend or dodge. He was knocked off Lao Bai's back. Bang bang! Puff! Feng Shao only felt a splitting pain in his chest, as if his internal organs were being torn apart. The pain seeped into his bones, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood uncontrollably. His entire body also fell to the ground with a bang. Fresh blood splattered all over Senior White's snow-white fur, like bloody flowers blooming in the snow, dazzling and terrifying. Feng Shao, who had fallen to the ground, could not stop the momentum and rolled twice. Ignoring the severe pain in his body, he abruptly turned over and stood up. Unexpectedly, he spat out another mouthful of blood, and his whole body powerlessly fell to the ground. There were 20 to 30 black-clothed men around him. The leader of the group was strong, and the two gray-clothed old men who suddenly appeared were far stronger than him. They instantly analyzed the danger of his current situation. The disparity in strength between Feng Shuang and him was too great. There was no chance of victory. Seeing that the situation was very unfavorable for him, Feng Shao did not hesitate to take out a signal flare and shoot it into the sky. He only hoped that reinforcements could come before he was killed. Otherwise, he was afraid that today would be the day he died. Bang! The signal flares that were as gorgeous as fireworks bloomed in the sky like flowers. A single signal flare caused 1,000 ripples. Kill him! Almost at the same time that the signal flare was shot, the leader wearing a ghost mask instantly shouted. However, when that voice was heard, Feng Shao, who was on the ground, was shocked and looked up at him in disbelief. Chapter 310. At that moment, the people that saw the signal in the sky that clearly formed the character Feng were all shocked. That's the Feng Manor's signal. Could it be that something happened? That place seems to be near Liang Mountain. Ah! Someone exclaimed, something must have happened to General Feng. Recently, he has been riding that strange white horse to the side of the mountain to train that fat horse. Once this was said, quite a few cultivators began to rush towards Liang Mountain. To them, Feng Shao was the country's general. He was even more straightforward and righteous. If they did not know, it would have been fine, but if they knew, they would definitely help if they could. At the same time, when the people of the Feng Manor saw the signal, their hearts sank. They gathered their men and quickly rushed towards the signal. No one understood the meaning of the signal better than them. The Feng Manor had many kinds of signals, and the one that appeared in the sky was an emergency signal for help. How serious of a situation would the family head need to use this signal for help? The hearts of the Feng Manor's guards were heavy. At the same time that they rushed to help, the housekeeper rushed to the place where the old master was in seclusion. Seeing the fatal danger coming towards him, Feng Shao, who could not even stand up, could not even talk about dodging or blocking. When he moved, his internal organs felt as if they were falling apart. The pain made it difficult for him to even breathe. With the danger approaching and the reinforcements not yet arriving, he could not help but feel a trace of sadness. However, in the next instant, his fighting spirit was ignited once again. Hiss. Old White, who was to the side, neighed and immediately appeared in front of him to protect him. When the two old men attacked, he suddenly raised his hind legs and kicked. Using both legs, he kicked one of the old men away. On! The old man that had been kicked by the horse's hooves staggered backwards. Because the horse's hooves used a lot of force, he could not even stand steadily. After retreating a few meters, he fell to the ground. Holding his chest that had been kicked, he stared with wide eyes. When he was first kicked, he only felt a strong force, but after a while, he felt as if there was a force spreading out from where he was kicked, causing the blood in his chest to rush to his throat and overflow from his mouth. Wiping away the blood at the corner of his mouth in disbelief, the old man's eyes widened as he stared at the strange horse guarding Feng Xiao with astonishment and shock. The other old man also felt a trace of astonishment at this scene. The hand that was originally going to attack Feng Xiao's throat paused for a moment. In this moment, he saw that strange horse snort out 2 breaths from its nostrils, splashing up a cloud of dust and blurring his vision. In the haze, he saw the horse neighing, raising its front hooves and thrusting out. Bang! Ah! There was a hint of pain in his cries. That old man's fall was even more serious than the previous one. His entire body flew out and smashed into the ground. He even spat out a mouthful of blood, dyeing his own clothes red. Pfft! Seeing this shocking scene, not only was Feng Xiao, who had thought that he was going to die for sure, stunned, but the group of men in black and their leader were also stunned. What kind of cultivation did those 2 old men have? They were strong cultivators at the peak of martial great master. They had actually been sent flying by a strange horse. Chapter 3:11. His tiger eyes shot out raging flames as he looked towards the leader of the black-robed men and angrily said, "You want to kill me? It's not that easy." As soon as his voice fell, he waved the big saber in his hand, and a fierce saber aura with a strong murderous aura attacked the surrounding black-robed men. The saber aura whistled through the air, and cut some of the black-robed men who couldn't dodge in time, and broke up their defensive formation. He could still stand up after being injured by a peak martial great master. When the leader of the masked men saw this scene, his eyes slightly widened. Thinking of the thing he drank earlier, could it be medicine? Thinking of this, his heart shook. He didn't even have time to think about where the medicine came from. Instead, he immediately lowered his voice and sternly shouted, giving the order to kill. Kill him. Don't let him go back alive. Once his voice fell, the surrounding black-robed men quickly surrounded and attacked. Because of the surging profound energy on everyone's body, the sword aura and murderous aura intertwined, forming a low airflow in the air. Kill! 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 Every shout contained an infinite amount of murderous aura. That sound shook the trees slightly and the sound reverberated in the air. Waves of murderous aura shot towards Feng Xiao, who was surrounded in the middle. The swift and fierce airflow caused small holes to appear on his casual clothes and traces of the smell of blood permeated the air. Ha 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 ha. Feng Xiao took a big stride forward and stood perfectly straight. With one hand holding the large saber and the other clenched into a fist, he looked towards the sky and laughed out loud. The martial great master's aura from his laughter transformed into a visible airflow that rippled outwards like water. Those black-robed men held their heads and cried out miserably under the aura he released. Some of the sharp swords in their hands instantly fell to the ground, some rolled on the ground in pain, and some couldn't bear the pressure and started bleeding from their eyes and noses. Ah! Ah! Their screams were deafening and pierced through the sky, shocking everyone. The ear-splitting and vigorous laughter suddenly stopped. His tiger eyes shot out a sharp ray of light and his entire body emitted a strong and biting cold battle intent. The large saber in his hand, accompanied by the profound energy in his body, fiercely slashed towards the ground. His deep and vigorous voice was filled with anger as it fiercely roared out. I'll show you what kind of person I, Feng Xiao, am. I'll show you what it means to hold back 10,000 men alone. Whoosh! Bang! Bang bang! The saber that landed on the ground seemed to cut through the air, making a sharp sound of airflow. When it landed on the ground, the airflow collided with the ground, making a loud sound of airflow and leaving a deep saber mark on the ground. That stream of air continued forward, splitting the men in black into two. In an instant, the thick smell of blood permeated the air. However, before everyone could react, he counterattacked with the large saber in his hand, and his entire body emitted an iron-blooded murderous aura. It was a bloodthirsty and ruthless aura that had been accumulated on the battlefield, and it was the shocking murderous aura of a true iron-blooded warrior. At this moment, Feng Xiao was so ferocious that it made one's heart tremble. He was like an Asura as he waved the large saber in his hand, reaping lives. When the large saber fell, it was accompanied by a fierce roar, followed by the shrill screams of the other party. Chapter 312. Because of his bloodthirsty savagery, because of his biting cold battle intent, those black-clothed men could not help but swallow their saliva and retreat. Their hearts were filled with fear and cowardice, and they did not even dare to accept the challenge. When the leader of the masked men saw the men in black retreating in fear, he shouted angrily, "Those who retreat will be killed without mercy." As soon as he said this, even though they were terrified, they had no choice but to fight. Everyone clenched the sharp swords in their hands and shouted loudly to boost their courage. Clang! Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Ah! The sound of swords clashing rang in the air along with the sharp sound of air currents. Sharp and mournful screams pierced through the air, startling the birds in the trees on both sides of the mountain path and causing them to flap their wings and fly high. As the broadsword fell, blood splashed out and dyed the ground red. As Feng Xiao fought, more and more corpses appeared on the ground. Some of them were headless, and some were chopped in half. The fear on the faces of the black-clothed men before they died was still on their faces. Their eyes were wide open in fear, and they could not close their eyes even when they died. Blood dyed Feng Xiao's robe red. There was his blood, and there was also the blood of the men in black. At this moment, he indeed proved what he had said before. One man can hold the pass against 10,000 men. Every single one of the black-clothed men who stepped forward died under his saber. The masked man could not help but sigh inwardly when he saw such powerful combat strength. Feng Xiao was indeed worthy of the title of General of the Kingdom. But even so, time was ticking away. If his reinforcements arrived, it would be even more impossible for him to kill him. Thinking of this, killing intent flashed in his eyes. He raised the sleeve arrow in his hand and aimed at the figure in the battle. Whoosh! The first arrow was shot and missed. Whoosh! The second arrow was shot and grazed his shoulder, but it still didn't hit a vital point. Just as he was about to shoot the third arrow, the two old men who had been slowed down by Lao Bai's kick stood up angrily. They stared at the white horse that was helping Feng Xiao fight and wanted nothing more than to go forward and kill it. However, after the previous scene, they knew that this white horse with a pair of dragon horns was a spiritual beast. Moreover, it was a rare spiritual beast. Therefore, they didn't want to kill it. Instead, they wanted to tame this spiritual beast after killing Feng Xiao. Stand down. We'll kill Feng Xiao, the two old men said in unison. They raised their hands and motioned for the remaining men in black to stand down. After all, the difference in strength was too great. If they went forward to kill Feng Xiao, they would only be killed. After all, they knew that Feng Xiao wasn't an ordinary person. Almost immediately after hearing the two old men's words, the remaining 7 to 8 black-clothed men couldn't help but inwardly sigh in relief. Seeing that their masters didn't say anything, they secretly retreated. Feng Zhao's fighting strength was too terrifying. They had arrived with 30 people, but now, only a few of them were left. If they continued to fight, they would undoubtedly die here. Feng Zhao, who was covered in blood, turned around and swept his sharp gaze across the masked man. His gaze then landed on the two old men. To be honest, he wasn't confident that he could deal with two peak martial great masters. But he could stall for time. As long as he could stall for time until reinforcements arrive, he would have a chance to live. Do you want to stall for time until reinforcements arrive? Let me tell you, you don't have a chance. Chapter 313. As soon as the pressure of a peak martial great master was released, Feng Zhao, who had already suffered internal injuries, felt the blood in his heart surge towards his throat. He only felt a slight saltiness in his mouth as the taste of blood spread in his mouth, but he forcefully suppressed it. At this moment, the two old men's palms were filled with profound energy as they charged towards him. The speed of a peak martial great master had been raised to the highest point. It was so fast that he could not even see how they had attacked before he was sent flying. Bang! Bang! Two heavy blows landed on his chest. One of them had used a fist to strike him while the other had used a palm to strike him. Both attacks contained a powerful profound energy aura that was fatal and ruthless. Pfft! Feng Zhao let out a muffled groan as blood spurted from his mouth. As he was sent flying, he felt an unbearable pain in his chest. While he was in a daze, the two old men's figures charged towards him once again. He only felt the wind from their palms striking towards the top of his head. Hiss! Lao Bai hissed angrily. When he saw one of the old men's palms striking towards Feng Zhao's head, he charged forward and fiercely collided with the old man, sending him flying. Damn it! The old man's palm was not able to land in time and his entire body was sent flying. The horse's strength was so strong that even a martial great master could not withstand Lao Bai's full force charge. His entire body rolled miserably on the ground and fell flat on his back. Bastard! When the other old man saw that the horse had ruined his plans again, he cursed angrily. He kicked a long sword from the ground and held it in his hand. He injected profound energy into it and slashed it towards Lao Bai. Originally, he did not intend to kill it, but it had ruined their plans again and again, so he could not let it live. Pfft! Lao Bai exhaled 2 breaths from his nostrils as if he was mocking the old man for overestimating himself. He turned around and swung his tail at the old man. Pfft! With a puff, a yellowish-brown smoke was released from its buttocks. The yellowish-brown smoke was like a poisonous fog and was extremely smelly. However, just like that, it sprayed onto the old man's face without any warning. It also swung its ponytail and slapped him, causing him to choke and faint. When they saw this scene, the remaining men in black and the masked man in the lead all took a step back in shock, avoiding the yellowish-brown smell that permeated the air. It was also at this moment that the masked man in the lead saw Lao Bai cry out and lie down on the ground. He carried the heavily injured and dying Feng Zhao on his back and ran back. Seeing this, he reacted instantly. He raised his hand and aimed the sleeve arrow at Feng Zhao's back. With a flash of murderous intent in his eyes, the sleeve arrow shot out fiercely without hesitation. Swish! Ah! Feng Zhao, who was already on the verge of death, cried out in pain. A short sleeve arrow was stuck in his back, and his blood turned from red to black. He, who was originally able to sit up, was now lying on Lao Bai's back, allowing him to gallop all the way back. The masked man, who was about to chase after them, faintly heard the arrival of reinforcements. He immediately shouted in a low voice, "Retreat!" As he led the rest of the men to retreat quickly, he looked back unwillingly. Although he did not see Lao Bai die with his own eyes, he had suffered 2 palm strikes from 2 peak martial eminent realm experts and was even hit by his poisoned sleeve arrow. Even if the Daluo immortal came, he would not be able to save him. When he thought of this, he finally felt relieved. He quickly retreated and disappeared into the mountain path. Feng Shao. Chapter 314. Hiss. Lao Bai excitedly hissed when he saw the old man appear. No one knew how afraid he was that Feng Shao would die like this. If he really died like this, wouldn't his master die of grief? In the blink of an eye, the old man came to Lao Bai's side. He looked at his son, who had lost consciousness, with a poisoned sleeve arrow in his back and black blood oozing out. His heart trembled slightly. He carried him from Lao Bai's back, took out an antidote with trembling hands and forced it into his son's mouth. Leave a team to search. The rest of you, follow me back to the manor. After saying this, he carried Feng Shao and quickly rushed back to the Feng Manor. At the same time, Fengzhou, who was cultivating in the origin space, suddenly felt uneasy. A feeling of panic took over her heart. Her heart thumped violently as if something bad had happened, making her unable to calm down and cultivate. Thus, she lightly exhaled and flashed out of the origin space. Just as she opened the door, she saw Ling Shuang's expression change as he hurriedly ran in. "Master, something happened at home." Hearing this, Fengzhou's heart sank. She said, "I'll go back first. You follow me." With that, she had already rushed out. When everyone in Yunhua City saw the old Master Feng carrying an unconscious Feng Shao with an arrow in his back, the entire Yunhua City was in an uproar. It can't be. It really is Feng Shao. Who is so daring to assassinate him? He's a martial ancestor. Hiss. It looks like his injuries are not light. There's an arrow in his back. The situation doesn't look good. Everyone discussed in low voices. They didn't expect someone to be able to injure Feng Shao to this extent. Furthermore, it was in Yunhua City. It could be said that when they saw the scene of Feng Shao being injured, some of the family heads began to speculate. When old Master Feng carried Feng Shao back to the manor, the entire Feng manor was in a state of worry and unease. The doctors in the manor were immediately brought to Feng Zhao's courtyard for an examination. Feng Zhao's courtyard was surrounded by a circle of guards, and they were all on high alert. Old master, I'm afraid the patriarch is. After the doctor in the manor took the pulse, he was shocked. His face was pale as he knelt down. Even his words were trembling and he was unable to speak properly. Seeing this scene, the old man's heart sank. He tried his best to calm the panic and worry in his heart. His old voice was slightly deep as he said, "If you have something to say, say it. How is he doing? Not only is the patriarch poisoned, but his internal injuries are also very serious. His sternum has been shattered, and there is blood on his chest. I'm afraid he's doomed." After saying this, the doctor lowered his head, not daring to look at the old man's expression. He said in a low voice, "Also, the arrow in the patriarch's back cannot be pulled out. If it is pulled out, the patriarch will definitely die on the spot." Hearing this, the old man felt like the world was spinning. His entire body swayed. Luckily, Ling Hua supported him, so he did not fall down. "Grandfather, how is foster father?" Guan Shilin's deep and hurried voice came from outside. Following that voice, the door was pushed open, and he quickly walked in from outside. "You can leave first." Chapter 315. Old Master, don't worry. I've already sent a letter to my sister. Master will rush back as soon as he receives the news. With Master's medical skills, Master will definitely be fine. Ling Hua comforted him gently and poured him a cup of tea to calm him down. Guan Shilin walked forward and saw his adoptive father's dark purple lips. He hurriedly asked, "Grandfather, did adoptive father take the antidote before he was poisoned?" "Yes, I gave him the antidote when I found him. Fortunately, I left some with Phone Girl just in case. Otherwise, I'm afraid he wouldn't have been able to hold on until he came back. The old man only calmed down after hearing Lang Hua's words. However, he was still worried. After all, Feng Xiao was so badly injured and poisoned. The poison seemed to be very strong. He gave him the antidote, but it still couldn't cure the poison. He could only suppress it. He could only wait for Feng Girl to come back and see if there was any other way. Guan Shilin pondered and said, with adoptive father's cultivation, he could still be injured like this. The other party must be very strong. In Yunhua City, who could have such cultivation and become enemies with adoptive father? Old Master Feng shook his head. I brought him back at that time and didn't check the scene. However, I left a team of phone guards to search. I hope they can find some clues. Old Master, the third prince requests an audience. The voice of a phone guard came from outside. Hearing this, the old man said to Guan Shilin, go out and take a look. Block them. I don't want to see anyone now. Yes. Guan Shilin responded and told Lang Hua to take care of the old man. Then, he stepped out and closed the door at the same time. Outside, Murong Yishuan, who was blocked outside the courtyard, saw Guan Shilin come out of the room. His eyes flashed slightly. He didn't expect Guan Shilin to have such a close relationship with the Feng family. He was blocked outside, but he could enter and leave freely without any obstruction. Third Prince. Guan Shilin cupped his hands and bowed. He looked at the third prince and said, something has happened in the mansion. Everyone is very worried and busy right now. Forgive me for not being able to entertain the third prince. Hearing his subtle dismissal, Murong Yishuan didn't argue with him. Instead, he said, I heard the news that something had happened to Uncle Feng, so I rushed over. My father also sent 2 doctors over to see if they could help. If it's inconvenient for me to go in, then let the 2 doctors go in and take a look at Uncle Feng. Their medical skills are considered top-notch in Yunhua City. Hearing this, Guan Shilin glanced at the middle-aged man and the old man behind him. He paused for a moment and said, wait a moment. I'll go in and ask. She didn't know when Xiao Jiu would come back. If her grandfather didn't have any objections, she could let these 2 doctors take a look at her adoptive father's condition. Murong Yishuan nodded and watched him return to that room. Not long after, he walked out. Please come in. Guan Shilin came to Murong Yishuan's side and gestured for him to enter. At this time, Murong Yishuan brought the 2 doctors in. When he entered the room, he saw the old man sitting by the bed, tired and worried. Feng Xiao was lying on his side on the bed, facing the outside. His face was dark purple and his lips were also purplish black. The situation didn't look good. Seeing this, his heart sank. He didn't expect the situation to be so serious. Who was so daring? Who dared to hurt Feng Xiao like this in Yunhua City? Chapter 316. When the 2 doctors came forward, he bowed in front of the old man and asked, Grandfather Feng, have you found out who did this? The old man shook his head and sighed, no. At that time, I was only focused on bringing Feng Xiao back and did not go to check. Now that he is unconscious and his life is hanging by a thread, how could I have the mind to investigate this? Grandfather Feng, don't worry too much. Uncle Xiao is blessed by the heavens. Nothing will happen to him. He comforted him warmly and looked at the 2 doctors who had retreated after taking his pulse. Seeing that their expressions were grave, he asked, how is it? The 2 doctors looked at each other, bowed to them, and said, replying to the third prince, Old Master, General Feng's injuries are too serious, and there is a blood clot in his chest. There is also a strong poison in his body, and we are afraid. We are not skilled enough to treat him. Murong Yishuan heard this and frowned, asking, is there no other way? The 2 doctors pondered and paused for a while, saying, if we can find the ghost doctor, perhaps there is a chance of survival. However, that ghost doctor is elusive and we don't know where he is. Even if we find him, he is too far away to put out a nearby fire. The patriarch had already heard about it from the physicians in the manor. Now that he heard the two of them say this, he was mentally prepared and didn't feel too shocked. However, his mournful expression still made people's hearts clench. Since there is no way to treat him, please go back. My adoptive father's current state makes it inconvenient for the manor to receive guests. Third Prince, please express our thanks to the monarch. As Guan Shilin spoke, he gestured for the three of them to leave. Muro Nishian glanced at Guan Shilin, then said to the old man, Grandfather Feng, then I will go back first. I will send people to inquire about the ghost doctor's whereabouts. If there is any news, I will immediately send someone to invite him over. You are considerate. The old man nodded and bowed to the three of them before leaving. After leaving the Feng Manor, Muro Nishian had the two doctors report back first. He then went to the black market to inquire about the ghost doctor's whereabouts. If the ghost doctor had already returned to Yunyu City, perhaps Uncle Xiao would have a chance to live. However, on the way to the black market, he saw people from the black market rushing towards the Feng Manor. Seeing this, he paused and turned around to glance at the figure before following them to the Feng Manor. As for the imperial palace, the monarch was asking, how is Feng Zhao's condition? Monarch, General Feng's condition is not good. Not only are his internal injuries, he has also been poisoned. There should be medicine to suppress the poison. Does that mean his injuries are really serious? The monarch frowned and asked. The two doctors looked at each other and paused for a moment before they said, if there's no miracle, he won't survive tonight. How can there be so many miracles in this world? However, they did not know that a white figure had quietly returned to the Feng Manor. Without alerting anyone, she arrived at Feng Zhao's courtyard. Chapter 317. Eldest Miss. The guards knelt down on one knee and saluted her respectfully. Fengjiu glanced at the guards around the courtyard and ordered, don't let anyone near this courtyard without my permission. As soon as she finished speaking, she stepped inside. Yes. The guards replied. They only stood up after she entered the courtyard. The people in the room quickly came out to greet her when they heard the noise outside. When the old man saw her, he almost cried. Little Feng, you're finally back. Your father, his strong front in front of outsiders, finally collapsed the moment he saw his family, revealing the worry and fear that he had been suppressing. His voice was choked with sobs and his old eyes were slightly red, with faint tears welling up in his eyes. Fengjiu strode forward to support him and said guiltily, Grandfather, it's little Feng's fault. She came back so late. No, it's good that you're back. Little Feng, quickly go in and see your father. The old man wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes and pulled her into the room. After entering the room, Fengjiu quickly walked into the inner room. When she saw Feng Zhao lying on the bed, her expression changed slightly. She strode forward to the bedside and quickly examined him. The more she examined him, the more shocked she became. Seeing her serious expression, the old man, who was supported by Guan Shilin, couldn't help but ask worriedly, how is he? Can he still be saved? When he asked this, his heart was trembling. He was afraid that in the end, it would really be the white-haired person who would send the black-haired person away. The situation is very critical, she said without turning her head. She took out a tool from her space and said, Brother, come and help me. I have to take out the hidden arrow first. Okay. Guan Shilin responded and quickly stepped forward. Lang Hua, bring me a basin of water. Yes. Lang Hua responded and quickly turned around to leave. Not long after, he came back with a basin of water. The old man couldn't help, so he could only watch anxiously from the side. Fengjiu first washed her hands, then tore her father's clothes from the back. She looked at the arrow in the sleeve and frowned. This was a barbed arrow. If it was pulled out directly, it would definitely pull out a large piece of flesh and blood. If the bleeding couldn't be stopped, the situation would be even more serious. Thus, she could only take out a small knife and cut open the flesh beside the arrow while carefully moving the arrow outwards. Fresh blood gushed out, tinged with black spots. Guanxilin watched as the barbed sleeve arrow was slowly pulled out of the wound. When she finally pulled it out, she sprinkled the hemostatic medicine she had prepared on the wound. It took her a whole bottle of hemostatic medicine to stop the bleeding. Fengzhou simply bandaged the wound on her back. She picked out a sharp and small weapon that looked like a steel pipe from the tools and ordered, "Lay him flat and cut open the front of his clothes." Guanxilin did as he was told. As soon as he retreated, he saw her immediately stab the sharp weapon in her hand towards Feng Zhao's chest. When he saw this scene, he was shocked and almost cried out involuntarily. A stream of blood spurted out from the steel pipe and splashed onto Fengzhou's body like a pillar of blood. She used her spiritual power to press it against her father's chest. When she saw that her father's mouth was also bleeding, she pressed down on the place where the steel pipe had pierced his chest. She nimbly pulled out the steel pipe and quickly treated the wound. Chapter 318. Old Master. That was the housekeeper's voice. Hearing this voice, the old man steadied his mind and took a deep breath. Only then did he walk out with Lang Hua's support. Opening the door, he saw the housekeeper waiting in the courtyard. He asked, "What is it?" "Old Master, the black market's manager has come. He said that he knew something had happened to the master, so he came to deliver life-saving medicine." Seeing the old master's tired and worried expression, the housekeeper sighed. How was the master right now? Hearing this, the old man was startled and asked, "Where is he right now?" "Because of young Master Guan's orders, the gates are closed. This old servant didn't let him in. He's still waiting outside the gates." Just as the old man was hesitating about whether or not to take the medicine, Guanxilin's voice came from inside the room, "Lang Hua, come in for a moment." Lang Hua complied and had the old man stand properly before quickly entering the room. Not long after, he came out again and whispered a few words into the old man's ear. "How about this? Bring him to the main hall. I'll go take a look." The old man said and indicated for the housekeeper to bring him in. However, the housekeeper didn't leave. Instead, he hesitated and asked, "Old Master, the third prince is also waiting outside. Should we let him in? Let him go back first. Tell him that the manor doesn't have time to entertain anyone. No matter who comes, we won't see him." The old man waved his hand and said, "Yes." The housekeeper responded before heading out. "You stay. See if there's anything you need help with." The old man said to Lang Hua and indicated for him to stay. As he walked out of the courtyard, he paused and said to the guards around the courtyard, "The eldest young Miss' return is not to be made public." The guards were startled, but they still replied in unison, "Yes." Because they were guarding the courtyard, the manor's servants couldn't come over. Thus, the matter of the eldest young Miss' return was probably only known by them. Outside the Feng Manor's gates. Because of Feng Zhao's accident, the news spread like feathers all over the sky. Almost everyone in the city knew about it. All the major forces and clans were concerned about Feng Zhao's safety. After all, although the Feng Manor had side branches, the only direct descendant was Feng Zhao's branch. Adding on the fact that the Feng master was already old and had not broken through after being a martial ancestor for many years, Feng Zhao did not have a son, only a daughter. If he fell, then the Feng Manor would be in imminent danger. Thus, when everyone saw that the manager of the black market had come to the Feng Manor, they were a bit surprised. Could it be that Feng Zhao had connections with people from the black market? The moment something happened to him, people from the black market rushed over to deliver medicine. However, if it was the black market, he might be able to keep his life. After all, the black market in Yunhua City was only a small branch. Even so, there should be many precious and life-saving medicines in the black market. However, would the black market give such precious life-saving medicines to the Feng Manor for nothing? The Feng Manor's gates creaked open once more. The housekeeper appeared at the entrance and respectfully invited the manager of the black market out. He then said a few words to Murong Yixian before closing the gates once more. Feng Manor's main hall, Old Master Feng. The manager saluted Old Master Feng. Manager Yen. The old man returned the salute and gestured, "Please sit." Chapter 319. Hearing this, the old man hurriedly said gratefully, "Thank you so much, Steward Yen. This is really timely help. Regardless of whether my son can survive this disaster or not, I will bring gifts to thank you another day." "Old man, you're too polite." Steward Yen smiled and handed 2 bottles of medicine to him, saying, "One of these is for internal injuries, and the other is for antidotes. Old man, quickly take these and give them to General Feng. I won't stay any longer. Goodbye." He cupped his hands and turned to leave. The old man hurriedly asked the steward to send him out, and he took the medicine to Feng Zhao's courtyard. When he came back to the room, it seemed to have been cleaned up. On the bed, Feng Zhao's blood-stained robe had been changed by Guan Shilin and Leng Hua. Perhaps because the blood in her chest had been released, although she was still unconscious, her breathing was not as weak as before. "Feng girl, how is your father? Is his life in danger?" The old man came to Fengzhou's side and asked worriedly. Fengzhou took a sip of the hot tea Leng Hua brought over. After taking a breath, she said, "Grandfather, don't worry. He's not in danger at the moment. However, whether he can escape danger or not depends on whether he has a fever tonight. If the fever doesn't subside, then his life may be in danger." "Then what if he really has a high fever?" The old man's face was slightly pale, and he felt his heart tighten. "I'll stay here tonight," she said gently and comforted him. "Grandfather, don't worry too much. It'll be fine." Hearing her say this, the old man didn't say anything even though he was worried. Instead, he took out the 2 bottles of medicine and handed them to her. "This is from the black market steward Yen. 1 bottle is for internal injuries, and the other bottle is for antidotes. Can they be used?" Fengzhou shook her head. "I've already given my father the antidote pill and the 9 turns inner pill. The effect is much stronger than the medicine. He doesn't need to take any other medicine now. Grandfather, keep these 2 bottles of medicine." Guan Shilin saw that her clothes were still stained with blood and said, "Xiao Zhou, I'll keep watch here. Go back and change your clothes first." "All right, little Feng, go back and wash up first. We'll keep watch here." The old man looked at her tired expression and said with pity, "You must have rushed back as soon as you heard the news. It took less than 2 hours to get here from Peach Blossom Cove. In addition, you also treated your father. You must be exhausted. Take a bath and rest before coming back. I'm afraid I can't leave you here at night." "Okay, I'll come over here to rest for a while." She smiled and got up to walk out. Then, she paused and said, "Grandpa, don't make a fuss about my return. I'll come back later and tell you in detail about the attack on father." The old master nodded and said, "Grandfather knows. I've already instructed them. You don't have to worry." Hearing this, Fengzhou headed back to his courtyard. "In the imperial palace, what? You're saying that the black market steward sent medicine to Feng Zhao?" Murong Bo's heart tightened when he heard this in the main hall. He didn't even feel that his voice was a bit louder. Murong Yixian, who was standing in the middle of the hall, was slightly surprised when he saw this. He glanced at his lord father and nodded. "This son has asked Manager Yen. He said that he was entrusted by the ghost doctor before she left to take care of the Feng family. Bo steadied his emotions and asked, then is Feng Xiao out of danger now? Sun doesn't know because I can't enter. Chapter 320. Hearing this, Murong Yixian fell into deep thought. Looking at him, he said, Father King, Sun feels that it's best if Father doesn't go at this time. What do you mean? Murong Bo looked at him and asked. Father King, think about it. At this time, General Feng is in a life and death situation. The Feng Manor will definitely not receive guests. Also, with this kind of thing happening, it's not just them. There are also many large powers and clans in the city that will be paying attention to the Feng Manor's movements. Father King has already sent doctors to visit and express your concern. Thus, Sun feels that it's best if Father doesn't go. You mean to say that if I go again, I'm afraid that I'll be suspected of being the mastermind behind the assassination of Feng Xiao? He raised an eyebrow and his sharp gaze fell on his son. Murong Yixian lowered his gaze and did not directly reply. Instead, he cupped his hands and said, Sun only feels that it's not appropriate for Father King to go to the Feng Manor right now. Hearing this, Murong Bo fell into deep thought. His gaze paused on him for a while before moving away, saying, What you say is reasonable. Since you don't want to go to the storehouse and pick out a few medicinal ingredients to send over. Who knows, they might be able to use them. Yes. Murong Yixian replied and watched him walk out with his hands behind his back. He looked thoughtfully at his father's back as he left. His heart faintly felt uneasy and a serious expression appeared on his handsome face. He could only hope that his guess was wrong and that this matter really wasn't done by him. Otherwise, the consequences would be unthinkable. As for the other side, in the Feng Manor in Feng Zhao's courtyard, in a room, the old man, Feng Zhou and Guan Shilin were sitting around a table and discussing the matter of Feng Xiao being attacked. After elimination and analysis, the final result was hard for the old man to believe. No, it can't be. How is that possible? Maybe we guessed wrong. The old man didn't want to believe it because the answer was too hard for him to accept. Feng Zhou sighed, with our Feng Manor's strength, there aren't many people in the entire country of Glorious Sun that dare to go against us. Furthermore, this assassination attempt happened in the capital of the country, Cloud Moon City. It's hard for me not to be suspicious. Maybe someone from another country tried to assassinate your father. Maybe. Before he could finish, Feng Zhou interrupted him. Yes, that might be possible. However, there hasn't been any war between us and the Glorious Sun Empire in recent years. Therefore, the possibility of them suddenly attacking you isn't high. She paused and said, another thing is, there are not many people in Yunhua City who can accurately grasp Father's recent lifestyle and have the ability to injure him like this. I believe Grandfather knows. Although there are no useful clues left at the scene of the battle, who else but the Emperor of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, Murong Bo, can summon 20 to 30 such experts at once? Grandfather, don't forget that since ancient times, rulers have always been suspicious. Moreover, our Feng Manor's current strength is indeed enough for him to be wary of. If he wants to weaken our Feng Manor's strength, how could he not want to kill us? Her voice was faint, but every word of her analysis was reasonable, hitting the nail on the head. A tall tree attracts the wind, a big name attracts disaster, and a high merit overshadows the master. The Feng Manor was currently living up to this saying. Chapter 321. When your father wakes up, if the person who assassinated him is really the monarch, then we'll hand over our power. Hearing this, Feng Zhou raised his eyebrows. He was a little surprised that he thought of handing over power. Seeming to see her confusion, the old man sighed and explained, back then, your great-grandfather left a will. If the next generation really comes and wants to kill the Feng family, then it's time for us to hand over our power and go into seclusion. Your great-grandfather and the monarch's grandfather were life and death friends. He left a message that the descendants of the Feng family should not be enemies with the Morong family. If he wants to kill us, then we won't fight back. She frowned slightly. She disagreed. Your great-grandfather is naturally not that kind of foolish person. He once said that he can only do it once, but not twice. If he is not willing to give up after retreating, then there is no need to care about the old relationship. Therefore, when your father wakes up, if it is really as you said, then we will hand over the power as a sign of concession. Speaking of this, he sighed, I only hope that we guessed wrong. If it's true, then it's too disappointing. Fengjiu was silent for a long time. Then he said, Grandfather, no matter what, we have to wait until father is out of danger. You're tired today. Go back and rest. My brother and I will guard here. Yes, grandfather. We'll guard here, Guan Shilin said and said to Leng Hua beside him, help the old man back to rest. Yes. Leng Hua responded and stepped forward to hold the old man's hand. He said softly, Old man, let me take you back to rest. Okay, then I'll go back and rest. I'll come back later. The old man stood up and said, I was cultivating in seclusion. I was almost able to break through, but I didn't expect this to happen. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and said, although grandfather hasn't broken through the Martial Grandmaster Peak and entered the Martial Emperor realm, at least he has entered the Martial Grandmaster Peak Stage 3 of the Black Realm. This kind of strength may be the best for now. The old man nodded, that's right. Now that something like this has happened to our mansion, if I were to break through to become a Martial Emperor at this time, I'm afraid. Sigh. Let's talk about it later. He sighed and walked out. That night, Fengjiu stayed by Feng Zhao's side. Just as she was worried, he was indeed burning up because of his wounds. Fortunately, she was prepared. While helping him reduce his fever, she also changed the dressing on his wounds. Finally, his body temperature returned to normal in the second half of the night. Xiao Jiu, Godfather's temperature has returned to normal. You should rest for a while. He poured a glass of water for her. Seeing that she had been busy in front of the bed all night without stopping, he couldn't help but feel a little distressed. She was only 16 years old, but she had already shouldered the entire Feng Manor's burden. She had to treat her father's illness, take good care of her grandfather, stabilize the entire Feng Manor, and prevent the country's ruler from taking action against the Feng Manor. Even he felt distressed seeing her like this. She sat down by the bed and helped her father pull up the blanket. Although his body temperature has dropped, his internal injuries are extremely serious. The poison in his body hasn't been completely removed. I don't know if he can wake up tomorrow. Chapter 322. At this time, there was a light knock on the door and Ling Shuang's voice came from outside. Master. Come in. Fengjiu and Guan Shilin went to the table outside and sat down. They saw Ling Shuang, dressed in black, walk in with a tray in his hands. Master, young master, this is bird's nest porridge that the head of the household had people make. He placed 2 bowls of bird's nest in front of the 2 before retreating to the side. Has my grandfather gone to sleep? Fengjiu ate the bird's nest porridge while asking. Hua is keeping watch at the head of the household. He said that he has already gone to sleep. Ling Shuang spoke then paused. The 6 Phoenix guards have arrived and are waiting outside. They want to see master. Fengjiu ate the bird's nest porridge and moved the bowl to the side, saying, have them stay in the manor for now. When I have time, I will see them again. Yes. Ling Shuang complied and went out to pass on the message. After the 6 people waiting outside heard this, they looked at each other and left first. When they heard that something had happened to the head of the household, they had rushed back. They originally thought that the eldest young miss was not there, but who knew that she had also returned. However, they did not know how the head of the household was doing. Had he passed the critical period? Although the 8 people had left the courtyard, they did not go far. Instead, they stood guard around the courtyard like the guards in the manor, silently guarding it. That night, not to mention Fengjiu and the others, even Murongbo, who was in the imperial palace, was unable to sleep. He had been worried the entire night. He did not know how Feng Xiao was doing. Had he died? Or had he not died? At that time, he had been able to hear his voice. If he had not died, then perhaps, thinking of this, he stood up and paced back and forth in his bedroom. He was restless and could only hope that the sun would rise soon so that he could send people to inquire about the situation. Originally, he had wanted to send people over tonight to prevent any future trouble, but after hearing that the Feng Manor was being strictly guarded, he gave up on that idea. If he sent people over to assassinate him tonight, he feared that it would arouse their suspicions. After thinking it over, he could only give up on that idea. Just like them, Murong Yixian, who was in the Wangfu, couldn't sleep tonight. Today, his father's expression and actions made him somewhat suspicious. He was afraid that the attack on Feng Xiao really had something to do with him. If that was the case. No. Perhaps he had guessed wrongly. Perhaps his father would not do something so impulsive and reckless. However, there was a voice in his heart telling him that he was most likely the one who did it, because he wanted to kill Feng Xiao at that time. If Feng Xiao had died at that time, then everything would have been under his control, and there would have been no such anxious and worried situation. The various factions in Yunhua City were all deep in thought. If Feng Xiao fell, what would happen to the Feng Manor? If Feng Xiao fell, would the Feng Manor belong to the imperial family or would it be taken over by one of the Feng Manor's side branches? After all, without Feng Xiao holding down the entire Feng Manor, just the old Master Feng and the 16-year-old Feng Qinggu would not be able to protect the large Feng Manor. As for what would happen to the Feng Manor in the end, they were all very curious. Thus, they were all paying attention to Feng Xiao's life or death. Until the next day, when the sun rose, almost every family and faction had sent people to inquire about the situation. What was strange was that there were no mournful cries coming from the Feng Manor. There were no white lanterns hanging in front of the gates, and there was no news of Feng Xiao's death. Then, was he alive? Chapter 323. Almost everyone was craning their necks to look at the Feng Manor, hoping that some news would come out. However, if the Feng Manor did not deliberately release the news, they would not be able to find out anything. This was because the Feng Manor's guards, servants, and male servants were all carefully selected. Apparently, the servants and male servants were separated into the inner and outer courtyards. The people from the outer courtyards were not allowed to set foot in the inner courtyards. They could only wait in the front areas. Because of this, if they wanted to find out about the Feng Manor, they really needed to release the news. Otherwise, they would have worked for nothing. However, the matter of Feng Xiao being attacked was known by the entire city. There were also doctors who said that he would not live past last night. Then, regardless of whether he was alive or dead, the Feng Manor should have released some news. That was why they only needed to wait for the news to be released. However, this news was not released until noon. What? Feng Xiao did not die, but fell into a coma and became a living corpse. What is the difference between that and death? Yes, he didn't die. I heard that the medicine from the black market saved his life. However, due to the poison seeping into his internal organs and his sternum being shattered, he fell into a coma. I heard that there's no chance of him waking up. Hearing this, one person asked, "Is this true or false?" If he really became a living corpse, then it would be better to just die. Isn't that so? Say, he is a mighty general and a martial ancestor expert. Now that he has become like this, it really is a fate worse than death. Another person sighed and shook his head regretfully. Ah. If General Feng falls, I'm afraid that the Feng Manor will. Another person heard this and laughed, saying, "What happens to the Feng Manor has nothing to do with us. Since ancient times, this sort of thing has happened many times. I estimate that once this news spreads, the Feng Manor's side branches will definitely become chaotic." The Feng Manor's side branches. This Feng Manor is already different from other families. They have already split up. Even if there are side branches, they should not get involved, right? Hee, that is hard to say. With Feng Shao falling, only Master Feng and eldest young Miss Feng remain. It's not like you don't know. Doesn't Master Feng have amnesia? Although there have been no reports of it acting up recently, no one knows when it will act up. In addition, eldest young Miss Feng is only 16 years old. Her strength is lacking and she is young. How could she control everyone in the Feng Manor? As I see it, I reckon that the Feng Manor's troubles are about to come. It's hard to say. Didn't eldest young Miss Feng already receive the Feng command? With the Feng guards listening to her orders, who would dare cause trouble? If they don't have strength, who would obey a little girl? Who doesn't know that in this world? If you don't have the strength, do you think you can use a chicken feather as a token of authority? You really are too. On this side, everyone was discussing. On the other side of the palace, after hearing the news, Murongbo's heart, which had been hanging for an entire night, finally relaxed. He sat down on the dragon throne and asked the secret guard below. "Is this true? That Feng Shao really became a living corpse?" This subordinate has heard that this is indeed the case. As for whether it is true or not, because I cannot get close to the Feng Manor, I do not know. The hidden guard respectfully reported.